action by Anglo-American allowed by the government of the ANC does not only affect the mine workers, but also deeply affect their kids who will never see university doors only because of the useless ANC and its corrupt leader, Zupta. Yes. Note that the well-being of mine workers, petrol attendants, and all those who toil very hard to feed their families has never been a concern of the ANC. It's only their vote that matters to the Zupta-led wrecking machine. We call on the ANC government to stop misleading our people and secure jobs as promised. We further call on the Minister of Zupta, Musebenzi Zwane, to intervene to save the jobs of mine workers
Honorable
in the
Member.
Anglo-American Sishen plant and stop going around like a headless chicken securing deals for
Honorable
Zuptas.
Member, I'd like you to withdraw
Object.
the many mentions of a name that really we are not familiar with. Even before I put the motion, I'd like you to withdraw that, Honorable.
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Shibambu, I'm talking to an honorable member of this House.
Before you take that ruling.
No, I am not going to be told by you what I should do.
No, but
take your seat, Honorable Shibambu.
I want to raise a point of order.
Oh no, Honorable Shibambu, take your seat. I am in the middle.
Order is allowed in
Honorable
this House.
Shibambu, if you don't want to actually do what the chair is telling you, I will have to ask you to leave the chamber.
But I'm raising a point of order.
No, Honorable Shibambu, you don't come in. You don't come in the middle of my statement. You can't do that. Honorable Member, please withdraw that.
We call on those affected to know
Honorable
that the EFF
Member.
is the only hope.
Honorable Member.
Reject the useless
I
ANC
told you
elections.
to withdraw.
Which word should I withdraw?
Withdraw all the references to
No.
Zupta. Withdraw.
Why?
You referred to an honorable minister by a name he doesn't have. Withdraw, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, withdraw. You know you have the draft motion in your hands. Are you going to withdraw or not?
My chief whip's hand is up, so
No,
I can't speak before
you are not
him.
going to tell me how to preside. Are you going to withdraw or not, Honorable Member?
Honorable
If you
Speaker.
don't,
Honorable Speaker.
Member, please withdraw from the chamber. Honorable Member,
Speaker.
withdraw from the chamber.
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Shibambu, I have not recognized you.
But I'm asking for your
I am
recognition.
recognizing that honorable member that I'm talking to. Honorable Mukause. Honorable Mukause, withdraw.
Honorable Speaker, is unfair, but I withdraw.
Honorable Mukause, you can't withdraw conditionally. You can't tell me it's unfair. It's either you withdraw unconditionally or you have not withdrawn. Honorable Mukause, withdraw unconditionally.
Honorable Speaker, I withdraw.
Thank you. Honorable Shibambu.
Honorable Speaker, there's nothing wrong with saying the word Zupta in this parliament.
Honorable
It's
Shibambu.
not unparliamentary because we're going to use it consistently. And
I don't know on what point you are
It's a
up
point
raising
of
that
order
point.
because-
No, there's no such
because
point of order. Just take a
initially
seat.
the chief whip of the majority party said
Honorable
that you
Shibambu,
can't use
take
the
your
word
seat.
Zupta. But
Take your
Zupta
seat.
is a word we're going to use to refer to someone who knows
Honorable
himself that they are
Shibambu, take
Zupta.
your seat. Are there
Madam
any
Speaker?
further motions without
Madam Speaker, I had one-
Madam Speaker?
Honorable Sope?
Yes, but it is unfair, Madam Speaker. We've been called names here. We've been called
No,
fascists here.
Honorable Sope?
So today,
I
you are
don't know.
making us
Now
to withdraw
there's no
Zupta.
point on which you are up on your feet. Just take your seat. Honorable Steenhuisen?
if I may rise on Rule 63, Madam
I'd
Speaker.
like to record the ANC objects to this motion. Thank you.
Honorable Steenhuisen?
Madam Speaker,
Order, honorable members.
Madam Speaker, I want to point out that you stopped the honourable member whilst the motion was still in way to protect, rightly so, to protect a member of this House. I wanted on record you didn't afford the same courtesy to Ms. Kola Barnard as a member of the opposition. That is inconsistent ruling, Madam Speaker.
When? What happened?
When she
to
was
Ms. Kola
insulted,
Barnard?
when she was insulted in the motion that the EFF member brought forward, you said it had fallen away and that we couldn't do anything about it. Yet you were quite happy to stop the honourable member when it was the president being insulted. That's inconsistent.
I have no clue what you are talking about.
I took a point of order, Madam Speaker. I took a point of order a few minutes ago.
Honourable Steenhuisen, may I go back to whatever might have happened, because I really don't know which one you are talking about.
You've got to be
So
kidding me.
I will, whether your hands are up or you are screaming, I will look back at what you are referring to. Are there any further motions without
On a
notice?
point of order, Speaker.
What's the point of order?
Speaker, I'm just rising on a point of, I just want to check with you for clarity in terms of the rules. We are on the same rules of the National Assembly, right? I just want to check with you, what is wrong with calling a person Zupta, and why are you ruling out that as unparliamentary? And on which rule are you ruling that?
Honorable member, I would like you to take your seat, because I've dealt with that issue, and fortunately the honorable member has cooperated. I now want to proceed with the business of the House. Any further motions without notice, honorable member?
The African National Congress moved without notice that the House notes that on Sunday, 14th February 2016, South African Charles Schwarzel scooped the Tshwane golf title after beating Jeff Winter of Denmark in the Tshwane Open at Pretoria Country Club. Acknowledges that the 31-year-old total of 16 under was comfortably ahead of Jeff Winter. In second, on 8 under for the week. Further acknowledges that this was Schwarzel's 8th European Tour title on home soil as he gears up his preparations for this year's measures. Recalls that it was one of the few titles that still elude Schwarzel on South African soil, and he would have been especially keen to compete after losing in a playoff to England's Andy Sullivan in 2015 South African Open. Recalls that South African Anthony Mitchell was third on 6 under with another trio of locals in Justin Walters, Richard Steen, and Dean Bemester, sharing fourth on 4th under, and congratulate Charles on this wonderful victory and wishing him well in his future matches. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion.
We object.
The motion has been objected to and therefore dropped. Honorable member of the EFF.
Honorable Speaker, I rise on behalf of the economic freedom fighters to move without notice that the House note the lack of water in Huhudi Township, Vryburg, Ipelecheng in Swaziland, and many other parts of Northwest Province. Further notes the useless ANC government when they give reports to our people, even in this very same parliament. They claim to have a good story to tell. Acknowledges that the reality is that South Africans still live without clean drinkable water and still fetch water from contaminated streams, yet the ANC government says it's a good story to tell. What good story is that? When our people still live without water, the basic necessity. Further acknowledges that the EFF will not sit back and allow the ANC and its useless cabinet ministers to mislead the country. Further notes that South Africa has an escalating water crisis, especially in rural areas. The taps are dry or there are no taps at all. We call on the Ministry of Water and Sanitation to stop howling in this House and misleading the country and deliver service to our people as promised. We further call on the people of South Africa to continuously demand what belongs to them and reject laziness from officials who are supposed to provide basic services to them. We further call on the people of Ipelecheng in Swaziland, Uhudi Vryburg, and elsewhere in the country to reject the corrupt ANC government when we go to the polls later this year. I so move.
If there are no objections, I put the motion.
The ANC objects. Thank you.
Are there any further motions without notice? Yes, Honorable Member.
Honorable Speaker, I move without notice on behalf of the EFF that the House notes the ignorance by the Northern Cape Province and Hamahara local municipality. Further note that unemployment rate is very high in the area of Olifantshoek, and that leads to alcohol abuse and negligence of minors. Acknowledges that the phenomenon of minors who continue to roam the streets, standing in street corners and begging at night is at a rise. And this is because the ANC government cares for people only during elections time. Further acknowledges that votes of ordinary people matters with the ANC, but their well-being doesn't matter. Further notes that the useless and greedy Premier of Northern Cape, Sylvia Lucas, used more than 50,000 taxpayers' money to buy Kentucky Fried Chicken instead of investing in the well-being of young kids in the Olifantshoek area and the surrounding areas. Further acknowledges that the Minister of Social Development funded a march to protest in support of one man and one man only, Zupta, instead of investing in the livelihood of young people in such poverty-stricken areas. We call on the Minister and MEC of Social Development to invest in those poverty-stricken areas, intervene and provide much-needed services. We call on the people of Olifantshoek in the Hamahara municipal area to reject the ANC come the elections.
Point of order.
Point
I
of
so
order. The point of order, Honorable Chief Whip.
There is no such a person in this house called Zubda. The Honorable President cannot be called Zubda. I object and she must withdraw.
Honorable Mukause, please withdraw that name.
Honorable Speaker.
No, Honorable
There was
Shibambu.
never a suggestion by Honorable Mukause
No.
that there's a Zubda in this house.
Honorable
She said
Shibambu.
that there's an MEC who has funded
Honorable Shibambu,
in
I'm not
defense of
talking to
Zubda.
you. I'm talking to Honorable Mukause right now. I'm saying, Honorable Mukause, withdraw.
Honorable Speaker, tell us, who's the member of this House?
Honorable
who's called
Mukause,
Zupta?
please
Just
withdraw.
tell us. Who is the member of this
Honorable
House
Mukause, please
called
withdraw.
Zupta? Tell us.
I'm asking you.
You need to get used to
I'm
this
asking
word
you
because
to
we are going
withdraw,
to use it
Honorable
more frequently
Mukause.
in
If
the very
you
same
don't
House.
withdraw, I ask you to withdraw from the chamber. I've asked you 3 times now.
I withdraw.
But Honorable Speaker,
Honorable
no,
Shibambu.
but you're disrespecting us here. You're not applying the rules properly.
Honorable
No, you're
Shibambu.
not disrespecting us.
Honorable
And you're taking
Shibambu.
advantage because
Honorable
for those thugs
Shibambu.
outside there who will come here inside the house.
Honorable
here.
Shibambu.
Don't do that, Balek.
I have not
Don't do
recognized
that.
you. And you have no right to call me by my first name.
I've got the right to call you by Balek.
You have no right, and in fact, you must leave the chamber, Honorable Shibambu. Honorable Shibambu, honorable, I call you honorable, even when you've been dishonorable, and I now ask you to leave the chamber.
On what basis?
Ask-
On what basis am I leaving the
On
house?
the basis that you are busy undermining the chair.
I'm not undermining the chair. I'm saying
Leave
that you
the
must govern
house.
this house
Honorable
according to the rules.
Shibambu, leave the house.
Why should I leave the house?
Honorable Shibambu,
Why? On
because
which rule?
you want to disobey the rules and protocols of
On
this
which
house
grounds? On which
grounds that you are even calling the chair by the first name. That's the amount of disrespect.
But I must call you by your first name
Honorable
because you are useless.
Shibambu,
You're
please
not doing
leave.
anything, Musi.
Please leave, Honorable Shibambu. Leave the house, Honorable Shibambu. I am
Honorable
asking
Speaker.
the Sergeant at Arms to assist me
Speaker.
to make sure that Honorable
Speaker.
You are
Shibambu
useless,
leaves the
Baleka. You're
house.
not helping with anything. Corruption,
I
which
asked
takes money
you-
from the mines, it's what makes you to be corrupt every day. Corruption of Baleka Mbete.
Please go and get him out of the house. There she is.
Honorable Speaker, it must be noted that these people were not born honorable members. It must be noted. We can't be forced to call these people honorable members. We can't be forced. And we won't call you honorable because you don't deserve it.
Honorable members, we were still busy with motions without notice,
Speaker.
which I suspect we have exhausted.
Speaker.
Madam Speaker,
Honorable Speaker.
Yes,
we would
Honorable.
like to object because Chief Whip spoke and we'd like to object to this motion.
The last motion
not
without
be
notice has
answered.
been objected to. Honorable Sope.
Speaker. My mic is off. Hey, shut up when I'm not talking to you. Honorable Speaker, may I address you?
Go ahead, Honorable Sope.
Speaker, we want to put on record that you are not helping this House, especially on EFF when they raise on point of orders. Speaker, you don't even want to listen to us when we want to get clarity on even on the rules that you are applying in this House. You just don't want to listen to us. And Madam Speaker, I want to put on record that once you are doing that, you are ill-treating the members of FF all the time. And I believe that as member of this House, you are equal. And as a Speaker of this National Parliament, we look at you in order to share this meeting fairly. But each time when we rise, you just want us to sit down. Because we're challenging you, who is the member that Honorable Makause has called a Zupta? Because the Chief Whip of the ANC said she can't call a member of this House a Zupta. We want that clarity. So anything that is said by the ANC, it goes. And Speaker, as a neutral person, you are supposed to listen to all parties and take a fair decision.
Honorable Sope, can you now take your seat? A person in the chair is not in the chair because of being stupid. So you can't tell me that when a person is using words in order to insult and to abuse the integrity of another person, that is in fact elected by this House. Because you are not allowed to impugn integrity on a person elected by the House, even if they are not in the House, instead of doing it in the proper way by way of a substantive motion. And you people again and again break that rule. And we actually tolerate you a lot of the time. We really give you an opportunity to have your say, even when you are wrong. So I must say to you that we are not going to have unlimited patience with, in fact, a clear abuse of rules and a clear abuse of the integrity of the House itself. Honorable Surti.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity, and indeed the concern that I was going to raise firstly was the belligerence, the boorishness of the Honorable Member in relation to the Chair, and this has occurred over and over again. Honorable Chairperson, the rules are extremely clear that no member may utilize rude and offensive language. And indeed, this has been demonstrated over and over again. If I may, with respect, Honorable Chairperson, use by way of an analogy, if I were to call the Honorable Members Juligans simply because I associate the word Julius with hooligan, then they would find that offensive. Similarly, and I'm not suggesting that they are that. I am not suggesting that they are.
On a point of order, Chairperson. On a point of order, Speaker.
Honorable Chairperson.
On a point of order.
Point of order.
I said if
Point
I
of order.
was
Point
to.
of order, Speaker.
Point of order.
You can't all rise on a point of order.
I can rise. I'm rising
it's
on
okay.
a point of order to what he's speaking. That's why I'm rising on a point of order.
Honorable members, can you allow the Honorable Deputy Minister to finish?
After him, will you
And then
recognize
I'll recognize you.
Thank you.
If one person rises, then we can deal with one point of order. Honorable Surti, finalize your statement.
Yes, I will, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, I did not refer to a matter. I merely gave an example of what could be regarded as rude and offensive, and I certainly am not asserting that. Honorable Chairperson, there is another point, and the point that has been raised by the honorable members is in relation to the word zupta. Now, I want to say very, very clearly, the honorable members had in the past suggested that the honorable president was being manipulated by the Guptas. And the combination of the word Gupta and Zuma are clear demonstration of that belief and are indeed regarded as being offensive. Honorable Chairperson, it is my view that ostensibly and quite clearly the honorable members do not wish to give me an opportunity to express my view. They argue and cry for freedom of expression and yet are not tolerant of the opportunity of another member to express himself. It simply means that freedom of expression applies only to themselves in an unlimited way, and no other member in this honorable House has to be heard. What is happening consistently and repeatedly is an erosion of the integrity of this House, the authority of the Chair, who has a particular responsibility to ensure that there is order. I therefore urge the Honorable Speaker, Madam Speaker, to look seriously into the conduct of the offending members and take whatever appropriate steps are necessary. I thank you, Honourable Chairperson.
I want to recognize the honourable member of the EFF, the one with a duke.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I said to you earlier on, my surname is Honorable Low, but I can understand sometimes you forget things. Honorable Speaker, members of this House are mandated to come to this House and put out what they wait.
Order, honourable
the
members.
Honourable Suti, he have just raised
Order.
in fact, the Deputy Minister have just raised this issue, and look how they are shouting.
Can you
Look how
please
things
proceed, honourable member, and make your point?
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. First of all, you called us you people. We are not you people. We are honourable members, as you want to be called an honourable member. So we are not you people, and we are sent here and mandated by EFF members. So you are not doing us a favor to be here, and you're not going to say to us, you are running out of patience with us. It's not for you to decide when our term in Parliament is ending. It's not for you to decide, because we are sent here by members of EFF and not by you, Honourable Speaker. So for us to be here, it's not on your account. It's by the members of EFF that voted for us to be here. Then secondly, Honourable Speaker, the Honourable Deputy Minister make a comparison between Honourable Julius Malema as a Willigand. So, he did. He implied.
Order.
He implied.
I want to hear what the honourable member is saying.
You see how they are making noise from that side, from the ANC. I have never seen such old people that can make such a whole lot of noise. They are like kids, man.
Please proceed, Honorable Member.
So he must withdraw that word of hooligans because we are not sent here by him. Yet again, we are sent here by EFF members and not by your favor or your pleasure. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you for the information, Honorable Members. Are there any further motions?
No, but Speaker, Speaker, I rise on a point of order.
Honorable Member, what is the point of order?
No, the order is that, Speaker, as it is inherently your duty as a presiding officer to protect the integrity of members of this Parliament. The Honourable Deputy Minister stood there and said that an honourable member of this Parliament is a hooligan. I mean, and not only that, he said Julius. He said Julius is associated with hooliganism. And there's a principled, but Speaker, I'm addressing you. There's a principled narrative in this House, which is supported by the rules, that members of this House are not called by their names. They are called honourable. But again, it is also understood by your own rulings that we can't have a member of Parliament who stands and demean other members of Parliament, and you as Speaker are not able to rule on that. We demand that the Honourable Deputy Minister should apologize on the remarks that he has made about the leader of the opposition, Honourable Julius Malema. He should withdraw and he should be able to rein on that, Speaker. We request that you rule on that. It can't be that it's just information. We are calling order because we think it's not consistent with the rules of this House.
I've heard you, Honourable Member, and that's why I am going to go to the Hansard to see what you are saying. And I will rule. And I will rule.
Honorable Speaker, let me just help you right there.
No, I don't need your help. Honorable Sope, take a seat.
No, Honorable Speaker,
no, Honorable Sope, I don't need your help.
Honorable Speaker.
I do not need your help. Please take your seat.
Honorable Speaker, the Deputy President of EFF,
take your
just
seat.
chuck him out because he called you your first name.
Sope.
But he called our President a hooligan.
I'm going to look at that. That's exactly what I'm going to look at.
Speaker,
and I'm going
him.
to, if need be, I will rule and I will make him withdraw if he needs to withdraw. So there's no problem with that.
Speaker,
Honorable
Speaker,
Pando.
Even if you proceed in that line, Speaker, what we want to remind you is that in the past, what you have always said is that
Honorable
if you have
Member,
not
I
had
did
something,
not recognize
if you have not
you.
had something, you always
I
check
did
with
not
member.
recognize
Why don't you
you.
check with this particular
Please
member?
take a seat. Honorable Pando.
Speaker, I sincerely regret that I always wait for you to recognize me. Because members stand up and they're able to speak. This is most unfair. We raise our hands and wait. The point on which I'm rising is with respect to Rule 61. And with respect to Rule 61, I wish to agree with the honourable member of the EFF that when Rule 61 is breached, the Speaker should take action in terms of the rules of this House. That rule reads, no member shall refer to any other member by his or her first name or names only. And I believe that the action we've seen in this House has to be strongly taken as a disciplinary matter by yourself as the presiding officer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Steenhuisen.
Madam Speaker, I agree wholeheartedly with the Honourable Pandor, and that's exactly the point I rose on earlier when the Honourable Kola Barnard's name was used, both improper motives of racism applied to her and her names used without the prefix Honourable. I do, however, Madam Speaker, want to say that the Chief Whip will bear me out. This whole issue of notices, motions without notice, have been extensively debated in the various forums, and I thought that we had reached a compromise where we could actually have them starting to move forward again. I regret to say, and I say it with the deepest respect, Madam Speaker, I respect you as the elected Speaker of the House, so let me get that out the way. I think that the earlier ruling that you made is inconsistent with the Guide to Procedure as well as the Annotated Digest of Rulings. And I would like to just share the ruling with you. It was made on the 23rd of April 1998 by the chairpersons of committee. And I quote, "All members of the House are entitled to respect, and no member is entitled to more respect than another member." And I would venture to say to you, Madam Speaker, that today I agree with your ruling on the matter earlier, but with respect, the President has been afforded more respect than the Honourable Kola Barnard was offered by yourself and protection. And I would ask that this gets referred, both your ruling on my earlier point of order as well as the one by the Chief Whip, gets referred to the Rules Committee as soon as possible. Otherwise, I fear that these notices, motions without notice, again are going to become just a slanging match in this House and not going to achieve what they should do. So I respectfully ask that that gets forwarded to the Rules Committee for clarity as soon as possible.
Honourable Steenhuisen, I did earlier on say, on the matter of Honourable Kola Barnard, I do want to check what happened, because clearly I may have missed something which you are referring to. So before we refer it to the Rules Committee, I want to look at it, and I will come back on that matter. On the Honourable Chief Whip.
114. On this book, Honourable Speaker, page 114, it relates to Rule 1022. The mistaken notion that if a motion without notice has been ruled out of order, it will fall off. It will not be reflected in the records of the House. The rule book does not agree with that. It says, once a motion without notice is ruled out of order, it does not fall off. It's converted into a notice of a motion. Now, with all the words that we objected to, and that is why we do not want a motion without notice to be read here when we object to it, because it will be reflected in the records of this House, and therefore the integrity of this House is tarnished.
Honourable, both Chief Whips are raising strongly issues relating to how we continue to have problems when we are having motions without notice. It clearly continues to be something that, although it has been again and again processed at the Forum of Chief Whips, but the practice in the House continues to be something else. I therefore would like that we have a discussion with the Forum of the Chief Whips on yet this matter of motions without notice, which used to be motions without controversy, motions where we never had to disagree, motions where we passed condolences on people that have passed on, or we passed congratulatory messages to people who had done well in our society, but have suddenly, in the Fifth Parliament, become controversial. I think that's the fundamental part of the discussion that needs to be taken yet again, so that we agree what it is we want to do with this type of motion without notice. Because for as long as we have been in this Parliament, for the past 21 years, motions without notice were not controversial. Honourable Jackson, Honourable Tembu.
Thank you, Chair. I fully agree with your summation. But indeed, one member today of the EFF in this sitting did refer to President Zuma as Zupta. Except, indeed, this is a reference, Chair, and you have said all of us are not little babies sitting here. They are on record of saying, who is Zupta? They have said it in this House, they have said it in their press conferences, and they've said it everywhere else. It's a derogatory name for President Zuma. Now, all that I'm requesting in keeping with your ruling, Chair, is that that member who stood up earlier to refer to President Zuma as Zupta withdraws the Zupta version. Thank you, that's all.
I had actually prevailed on the honorable member, and as far as I know, she had withdrawn.
Chair, with your indulgence, she was the second member. There's a first one that raised the Zuma narrative.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Speaker, point of order.
Consult.
Did you recognize?
Honorable member.
Did you recognize him?
Honorable member.
Did you recognize him, Honorable Speaker?
But
he just stood up and
don't also shoot up and shout at me.
It's the same.
Don't just shoot up and scream. Honorable members, the first item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the majority party. I recognize the Chief Whip.
Honorable Speaker, I move that the House, notwithstanding Rule 29, which provides for the sequence of proceedings, limit the business for Wednesday, 24 February 2016, to the introduction of the Appropriation Bill and the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill, and the tabling of the Division of Revenue Bill and related matters. I so move.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? There are no objections, and therefore the motion is agreed to. The second motion on the order paper, the second is also in the name of the Chief Whip. Honorable Chief Whip.
Honorable Speaker, I move that the House, that the following item that was in the order paper, and which in terms of Rule 298 lapsed at the end of last sitting day, 2015 annual session, be revived for the consideration by the National Assembly. 1, the second reading debate, performing Animals Protection Amendment Bill. I so move.
I put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The third motion, which is the last motion on the order paper, is also in the name of the Chief Whip.
Honorable Speaker, I move that the House, subject to the concurrence of the National Council of Provinces, establishes an ad hoc committee, a joint committee in terms of Rule 138, the committee to consider the request by the Minister in the Presidency, Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, tabled in the announcements, tables and committee reports on the 18th of August 2015 and January 26, 2016, for Parliament to recommend 7 candidates for the appointment to the board of the National Youth Development Agency in terms of Section 9 of the National Youth Development Agency Act 2008. I so move.
I now put the motion.
I missed the last part, which relates to the constitution of that committee of 11 members of the National Assembly, ANC 6, Democratic Alliance 2, Economic Freedom Fighters 1, and other parties 2, and 9 members of the National Council of Provinces, and exercise the powers of the Joint Rule 32 that may assist in it carrying out its task, and report on the 15th of March 2016 to the House.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? The motion is
Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Member.
Just before we agree to the motion, we are not against the motion. However, I will need your indulgence on this issue. Currently, there is an ongoing process within the DPME Portfolio Committee. Are we now saying we are going to run a parallel process to that one, or is it being scratched off? Secondly, is this a response to a letter which the EFF wrote to your office with regards to the flawed processes of this particular ad hoc committee and the appointment of the board members of the NYDA? I would like you to answer me on those two. And thirdly, if then that is the case, can we then be afforded an apology as members of parliament that were called to come to a portfolio committee which was not supposed to have taken place? Thank you.
No, honorable members, this matter and how it should be dealt with has been under discussion with the various relevant committees of both houses. And indeed, the history of how it has been done in the past and all of that, and certain assumptions that had initially been made, all of that was consulted about and a final agreement made according to how, in fact, it is now announced in the ATC. So this ad hoc committee that is being created is the culmination of a process that has been going on up and down with all role players. And I know that there is communication also that relates to the EFF having raised a question, and there's a response to that. And so, as I say, the announcement is in the ATC, but the ad hoc committee has to be created because we do have a deadline in relation to this board of the NYDA. So, honorable members, I do want to now put the motion to the House. Are there any objections? So there are no objections. The motion has been agreed to. The next item on the order paper is members' statements. Does any member of the ANC wish to make a statement? Honorable.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. ANC welcomes the handover of 72 hectares of land by Sandral to the Human Settlement Department on Friday, 19 February 2016 in Knysna in the Western Cape. The ANC-led government plans to use the land to building houses for Knysna residents. The land will be used to build 500 houses, a clinic, a school, and a police station. The Minister of Transport and Human Settlement officiated at this handover ceremony. The ANC want to close the gap between the rich and the poor and to make sure that the people of Knysna also enjoy the kind of decent life that everybody else around this province enjoys. The Department of Human Settlement has committed itself to move the informal settlement dwellers to their new homes within the next 2 years. This has created a lot of excitement among the poor household of Knysna, who have confirmed that they cannot wait for the construction to begin. The land previously owned by Sandral was initially earmarked for the construction of the road to ease the congestion on N2 along the Garden Route. ANC-led government welcomed this project and commits to acquire an additional 201 hectares of land to
Honourable
address
Member,
the
your time
housing
has
backlog
expired.
in the Naisna.
The DA.
An ANC member confessed to Ndavana police that a Buffalo City Metro ANC branch chairperson approached him to assassinate DA branch chairperson Thando Kotongo and her mother. It was Matthew who quoted Jesus saying, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing. Inward, they are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits." The fruits of the ANC are corruption, bribery, and terrorism as they desperately clutch onto power. As the ANC fractures and collapses, the DA is growing, uniting, and strengthening members from across Dimbaza to McLean Town, Zwelicha to Mdantsane, Khayelitsha to the Greater East London. The DA's vision sees the fear ANC generates smothered by ensuring freedom, justice, and safe communities. The DA's vision sees the dreams of opportunity reignited and the potential of people unleashed under a DA government that provides quality education and jobs to the 280,000 people unemployed in the BCM. The DA's vision fuels hope of a fair society that cuts corruption and delivers to all. The DA values of redress, reconciliation, delivery, and diversity will return dignity, heal divisions, and mend hearts. The DA will not back down from this new struggle for freedom,
Honourable Member, your
fairness,
time
and
has expired.
opportunity.
The
We are
EFF.
resolute and unafraid.
Honourable Member, your time has expired. Please note that the time allocation for a statement is very specific and we will apply it as such. The EFF.
We are on the member statement, Chair?
Yes.
Okay. The Economic Freedom Fighters is the only party that is concerned on a daily basis with the struggles of our people. It is the only party that specifically takes education seriously. Inspired by the goal of ensuring universal access to education for all, the Deputy President, let me just clarify, not the Deputy President of the country, but the Deputy President of the EFF, and the Chief Whip of our caucus in Parliament, led the handing over of essential learning and teaching support materials to more than 200 grade 12 learners in 2 schools he adopted. Name of the school is George Sonto and Pambo High School in Malamulele. You must listen because you are working. Limpopo Province on Friday, the 19th of February 2016. This learning material includes study guides for all learners studying mathematics, life sciences, accounting, and English, video lessons sourced from Americom and Mindset Learn, laptops, projectors, and screens. The EFF Deputy President, Commissar Floyd Nyiko Shivambo, will also engage the learners on career information and admission bursaries applications to post-secondary and training institutions, inclusive of universities, universities of technology, and technical and vocational education and training.
Honourable Member, your time is now expired.
It can't be.
The ANC.
It can't be, Chair. Chair, it can't be. This is variable information.
Your time has expired. You must use another opportunity to share that information. The ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson. ANC March for Unity. The ANC commends thousands of its members, supporters, and ordinary South Africans who took part in its March for Unity, non-racialism, and democracy through the streets of Pretoria to the Union Building last Friday. The march was aimed at facilitating a national conversation among South Africans following the recent racist practices that have played out in some parts of our country. This was a historic and peaceful march organized by the ANC, and we applaud all our members for turning out in their thousands to take a stand against racism and all forms of prejudice and discrimination that have no place in our democratic society. We found it very disturbing that in recent months, the country has witnessed incidences of racism which at times were disguised as freedom of speech. The ANC calls upon all South Africans and all South African national groups to deepen democracy by embracing unity as a cornerstone for a better South Africa. Hashtag racism must fall. I thank you.
The IFP.
Honorable Chairperson, the government does not contest elections, nor does the state. Therefore, state money and government money should not be used for elections. By-election after by-election, the Department of Social Development is busy with food parcels all over the country. In Hlogwe, and I witnessed it myself on Sunday, Ebaqulusin, where the MEC of Social Development was there with loads and loads of food parcels. You are campaigning out of desperation, abusing state money, taxpayers' money to further your own gains. The fact that the playing fields are not even speaks to the fact that money is the milk of politics, and having been given the responsibility to oversee the money of the state, you are abusing it. If there's no by-election, there are no food parcels. Where there's by-elections, there's food parcels. Abantu bahloniphi babukela phansi nibenza ixesha zokudla ingabe niyahamba niyobakhankasa ngokuthembeka nangokweqiniso. To the extent that eQulusini there is no water, but you're busy with food parcels. Where you had erected a huge tent, 3 houses down, there was 3 old ladies there who needed wheelchairs and are living in a small house with 11 children. Instead of giving them the help that they need, you are busy with food parcels. This must come to an end if these elections are
Honourable
to be
Member,
free
your time
and
is now
fair.
expired.
You cannot continue doing this.
The NFP. The ANC. Order, honourable members. Order. Continue, honourable member.
Thank you, Chairperson. The African National Congress joined the people of Cape Town in remembering 50 years since the start of destruction of District 6. Originally established in 1957 in times of colonial audience, District 6 began as a community to free slaves, laborers, and immigrants. District 6 declared a whites-only area by the National Party government in 1966, in terms of the Group Area Act of 1950. 60,000 people were forcibly removed from area in and around Cape Town, including District 6, and resettlement around Cape Town. The bulldozing of homes and community of the barren Cape Flats led to the sense of alienation and continue to felt within many of communities in Cape Town, even today. Sadly, a disturbing from segregation continue to be enforced by the city of Cape Town through network of municipality planning the laws and effect confirming black people of periphery of CDP. As we mark the event, we do so sadness, but the same acknowledging this of the lesson from the painful past continue to remind us our collective responsibility of build truly united and racial South Africa. I thank you.
Go.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the Congress of the People is shocked. The opposition is shocked. The nation is also shocked. The ruling party has killed the all-important mutuality that prevailed in earlier parliaments. Today there is open hostility and open partiality. The legislature has become a limp appendage of an executive because the ruling party majority has surrendered the legislature to the executive. Honourable behaviour is no longer the norm in this Honourable House. The ruling party could not bear to hear Honourable Lekota speak the truth last week. They drowned his attempts to speak. The House curbed his freedom of expression and the privilege enjoyed by MPs to speak fearlessly. The ruling party cannot bear to hear the truth. Honourable Lekota ruffles their feathers by his mere presence. As a Robben Islander, Lekota hold up a mirror to the ruling party where they dare not see themselves. If what is happening in the House is not rapidly contained, disorder is going to spill out into the streets and civil insurrection will follow. The ruling party has lost the moral high ground and is therefore unable to hold our society together. The ruling party continuously accuses other parties of disruptive behaviour in this House. But, Honourable Speaker, last week the nation saw, or Chair, the nation saw to what extent ruling party
Honourable Member, your
MPs
time
were
is now
disrupting the
expired.
House.
The
Thankfully,
ANC.
Shabin is more orderly
Honourable
than
Member,
this
your
House.
time has
Thank
expired.
You.
Thank you. I recognize the member there at the back. I'll come back to you.
House Chair, it is every child's dream to have school uniform, especially at the beginning of the school year, regardless of their poor family background. This should be a happy time for every child. As the ANC, we are aware that for poor children from poor households, the excitement of the beginning of the school year can quickly be replaced by a feeling of despair if the families cannot afford school necessities. It is for this reason that the ANC welcomes the handing over of new school uniform packs for struggling children in Cape Town by the Minister and Deputy Minister of Social Development on Saturday, the 13th of February 2016. A number of schools from Gugulethu, Langa in Cape Town, were given school uniform packs targeting children from poor households. The school uniform pack consists of 3 pairs of socks, 2 tunics or skirts for girl children, 2 pairs of shorts or trousers for boys. The uniform packs also come with a jersey, a tie, and 2 shirts per child. The provision of school
Honourable
uniform
Member,
packs
your
was
time is now
done in
expired.
part of
The DA.
Thank you, Chair. Last week I said that on the 9th of December 2015, President Jacob Zuma pressed the red button and dropped what amounted to a nuclear bomb on the economy in South Africa. The decision to fire the former Minister of Finance, Nhlanhla Nene, turned an economic downturn into an economic crisis and unleashed a firestorm which destroyed investor confidence in South Africa. But now this week, with 48 hours to go before the tabling of the How to Beat a Ratings Downgrade budget, the President drops another bomb, this time a mini nuclear bomb, by saying that the Honourable Des van Rooyen was more qualified than any minister I have ever appointed before. What exactly is the President trying to say? That the Finance Minister is the second best man for the job. Whatever the case, in the end, the statement only serves to undermine the Finance Minister and undermine investor confidence. And so one wonders whether the President's cabinet colleagues don't agree with me. It's time for President Jacob Zuma to withdraw from the debate on the economy, rather like his predecessor, the Honourable President Thabo Mbeki, withdrew from the debate on HIV/AIDS. They know, and I know, that we would all
Honourable
be
Member, your
better
time is
off
expired.
if he did it.
The ANC.
The ANC is committed to intensifying the fight against TB by improving screening and treatment amongst the vulnerable group. It is in this vein that we welcome the opening of a new drug-resistant tuberculosis XDR-TB unit in East London in the Eastern Cape. This new unit at the Ngabela TB Hospital in Tanzania will accommodate 60 patients and will help to ease the pressure at Fort Grey Hospital, which was the only hospital that currently caters for patients with the XDR-TB. The ANC has said that TB is a dangerous and contagious as has killed a lot of people throughout South Africa. But the good news is that it is completely curable. Therefore, we appeal to South Africans to go for TB screening in support of the government program of testing 1.3 million citizens for TB and HIV by September 2016, prioritizing mostly farm and mine workers and those from informal settlements. The ANC also believes that this undertaking will assist in the improvement of the health status of the population and as well as addresses the challenge of TP. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The AIC.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. It is very much alarming to notice that many citizens of this country are still living in bad conditions, even after 21 years of democracy. Many people living in Glenville, in Ward 34, at Tegwini Metro, occupying 2 buildings with more than 70 families in each building, are really deserted and not getting the services from the government. These people live in old, dilapidated buildings which can fall anytime. Their area is not clean and very unhealthy for human beings to live in. It is not clear who now owns those buildings, which were allegedly once owned by a certain Mr. Mohammed, who is also not traceable now. These people, like any other citizens of this country, deserve the basic services like clean water, electricity, and others. We therefore, Honourable Chairperson, call upon the eThekwini Metro not to close water and electricity for such people, but to intervene and find a solution to their problem, which can restore their human dignity. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The ANC. Honourable Member on that side.
Thank you, Chairperson. The ANC recognizes people with disabilities as equal citizens and who should also enjoy equal rights and benefits like any other citizen. It is for this reason that we welcome bold plans by the provincial government of KwaZulu-Natal to train nurses, doctors, and therapists in sign language. This will ensure that there is improvement access to health facilities by people with disabilities. This is the first phase of training doctors, nurses, therapists, and others within the next 2 years. The provincial government has already trained 20 frontline workers in basic language in 5 health districts. These include medializing officers, admitting clerks, porters, and pharmacist assistants. A sign declaring provincial health institutions as sign language user-friendly will be part on all provincial health institutions. The ANC calls on all healthcare professionals and organizations representing people with disabilities to work together with government to find ways to deal with barriers that limit access to facilities by people with disabilities. We also call on government to ensure that the needs of people with disabilities...
Honourable Member, your time has expired. The DA.
Thank you, Chair. I note Minister Nzimandi's absence from the House, but his presence on Twitter this afternoon, while our universities are literally burning amidst an unyielding torrent of protests. This is the culmination of decades of neglect of the sector by the ANC-led government, a government which acted only when students were tearing down the fences around the union buildings last year. The DA continues to support peaceful protest. However, rogue elements have now hijacked the legitimate demands of students, and students of all persuasions are employing violence and intimidation against staff and their fellow students. Instead of providing decisive leadership, government is hiding behind the old excuse that a commission of inquiry is, quote, looking into it. Yet it appears that the commission is not even met yet, and the minister is nowhere to be seen. Although this government engineered a quick fix for fees must fall, and did provide some relief for many students, the crisis is far from over. The funding shortfalls which underlie 90% of these protests are so huge and so long-standing that the very survival of our universities is at stake. The DA thus calls on Minister Gordhan to give Vice-Chancellors the funding they need to face this crisis. Our universities are ablaze, and the only thing that can quench the inferno is a deluge of money, not the hot air of promises and talk shops. Thank you.
The ANC.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. African National Congress pledges solidarity and support to the families of the Lily Mine trapped workers and the entire nation during this difficult moment. Since day one of this unfortunate incident, government and ANC leaders have visited the mining site and have also visited the families of the trapped miners and the management of the Lily Mine. The ANC is encouraged by the level of commitment displayed by the Lily Mine management to do everything in their power to find the 3 trapped workers. We are satisfied that the management has committed to bringing the workers back to the surface regardless of circumstances. The families of 3 miners have been camping inside the mine premises since. Yvonne Mnisi, Priti Mabuza, and Solomon Nyarenda were trapped in the mine shaft on the 5th of February. We are fully aware that every minute counts and that time of its critical importance. We were informed that rescue operation will resume after another delay due to a broken rescue machine. We would like to express our appreciation regarding the swift response and support shown by the Minister in the Department of Mineral Resources, as well as the Premier of Mpumalanga Province and the local mayor. I thank you.
The NFP did not make use of the opportunity to make a member statement. I recognize the ANC.
The ANC welcomes the announcement by government that it has put measures in place to protect South Africa's ports of entry from any possible infiltration of the Zika-carrying mosquito subspecies. This comes after the confirmation by the Department of Health in the country's first Zika case, which says the patient, a Colombian businessman, appears to have contracted the virus outside South Africa. The man was diagnosed after presented himself to doctors in Johannesburg with a rash fever. It's understood he acquired the infection in the South American countries before traveling to South Africa. As the ANC, we further welcome the assurance by our Health Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, that there is no cause for panic. Our people are well protected against the Zika transmitting mosquito. We, however, wish to appeal to all South Africans, especially pregnant women, to adhere to the call made by the department not to travel to any area or countries where Zika virus transmission is currently ongoing, as well as all travelers to pay special attention to their health after they returned from Brazil or other affected countries. All travelers to Brazil or other
Honourable
affected
member,
countries
your time has now
are
expired.
advised to... Thank you.
That concludes member statements. Are there any ministerial responses? The Honourable Minister of Kokta, the Honourable Van Rooyen, the Honourable Minister of Science and Technology, all the honourable members, followed by the Honourable Minister of Health. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Our House Chair, as we join the people of District 6 in remembering the atrocities committed through the old ordinance system to them, let's be reminded that the dream country that we are looking for, the South Africa that we are looking for, where people will be living in harmony and peace, where people will have access to opportunities without being discriminated on the basis of race, is the one that we want all municipalities to practice. The indication of the usage of bylaws on the basis of race to push our people out of the CBD of Cape Town is something that we treat as a very, very serious allegation. And I would like Honorable Matebe to furnish us with the relevant details of the alleged practice, so as we are able to follow it up in the spirit of intergovernmental relations with the affected municipalities and the affected MEC. I will thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The Minister of Science and Technology.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The Honourable Member of the DA who spoke on higher education knows that what she said is far, far distant from accuracy. The ANC government has done a great deal with respect to investment in higher education since 1994. She is aware of the truth of this, having been a Deputy Vice-Chancellor, and knows the investments that have been made in higher education,
Honourable Minister,
knows the growth
let me
we've
just
had.
take this point of order, please. Yes, Honourable Member, why are you rising?
Rule 1057, subsection 8, if I may, and it's the preference of ministerial responses. The respective minister is not here. The deputy needs to respond. The Deputy Minister of Higher Education here is here. I'd like to understand why the Minister of Science and Technology is dealing with the question.
Now, Honourable Member, that if you look at the nature of the statements, some of them are not very specific in terms of the specific area that is being addressed to. Secondly, also Cabinet is clustered in a particular way that does not necessarily respond to the clustering that we are using in Parliament, and in this instance I will allow the Minister to respond. Continue, Honourable Minister.
There are several reasons for me to respond. Firstly, science and technology provides significant support to universities in our country because it is the major funder of postgraduate education in South Africa. And the changes we're seeing in higher education relate to the role that we play, both as science and technology, as well as higher education and training. Secondly, the Honourable Member is well aware that the Honourable Member from his party indicated that no changes have occurred in higher education, inadequate support by the ANC government since the inception of democracy. He's aware that I was Minister of Education in South Africa and knows, as his member does, that we provided significant funding increases, both for support to students as well as for ensuring that we improve infrastructure in higher education institutions in the country. So the Honourable Member is fully aware that the motion that they've moved does not stand the test of facts. Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Point of order.
Yes, Honourable Member.
I rise in terms of Rule 105. It's a statement by the Honourable Bazoli, not a motion
yes,
before the House.
We're dealing with statements, Honourable Member. Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, House Chair. On the issue of Zika, House Chair, I'm quite aware that every time there's an outbreak of diseases, people get worried to an extent where they do sometimes panic. So it will be important to give more information. I would like to start by stating that I am on record to mention that I don't regard the incidents that took place last year from a Colombian businessman as the country's first case of Zika, because, as I said, that infection never took place here on our soil. The second thing, Chairperson, I would like the House to know, Zika is not a new virus. It has been isolated as far back as 1947 in the rhesus monkey, in the Zika forest in Uganda. And that's where it got its name from. And from there was a isolation from humans in Nigeria in 1968. Zika virus doesn't kill. We don't know any person since that time who ever died from this virus. The disease itself is self-limiting. With flu-like symptoms, it will only be there for 7 to 2 days. From there, it disappears, as it did with this Colombian businessman. The biggest problem with Zika is in pregnant women. That's where our biggest fear is, because of the disabilities that the fetus might experience, like microcephaly. Other people call it microcephaly. I want to reassure the House that we are ready. Remember, it's not a long time ago that we have had Ebola. And so the teams, the methods, the procedures that we did to fight Ebola are still there in place, and we have just reactivated them, and we feel that everything is in order. Lastly, Chairperson.
Honourable Minister, your time has unfortunately expired.
Oh, thank you.
The Honourable Deputy Minister of Basic Education.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair.
I'd like to thank the Honourable Klope for the statement that she's made, and indeed the Deputy President of the EFF must be congratulated and commended for the support that he provides to the schools. We also would like to take this opportunity of thanking all political parties and the private sector for their collaboration, because after all, the President has said that education is a societal issue and it is indeed a priority of this government. Honourable Chairperson, we have developed a manifesto of values in our system of education, which is informed by the recognition of human dignity, respect, and tolerance. We do believe that this forum here, being the most significant forum in terms whereof our learners would be inspired in terms of conduct, would invite members to act in a manner that accords with the dignity of the House, respect for authority, tolerance, and that kind of expression of unity is significant. We do believe that the Honourable Klope would be able to convey that sentiment to the leadership so that indeed we could encourage our learners to emulate the leadership in this particular House. I thank you, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. Are there any further ministerial responses? That concludes ministerial responses. My apologies, Honourable Deputy Minister. I recognize the Honourable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair. I'll just deal with the 3 questions remaining that is directed to social development. Firstly, to the honourable members, in 2004, the Assembly passed the Social Assistance Act, Act number 13, and in that act, we talk about social relief of distress. So I really want to correct members and urge them to read that act so that they don't think social development has anything to do with food parcels. We don't deal with food parcels, we deal with what the act prescribes, and it has nothing at all to do with elections. Because, Madam House Chair, it simply says that South Africans that are poor can only be fed during elections. We don't. The Social Assistance Act is very clear on that matter. Allow me, House Chair, to deal with the second aspect. We thank the honourable member for the recognition and for the children who are supposed to receive uniforms. It's also reflected on the same act because every poor South African child that requires uniform has the right to get it. And we have rolled out, just between these 2 months, more than 160,000 uniforms, and we continue to do so in partnership with the principals. And let me also say, it has nothing to do with elections. Since 2004, children have been getting uniforms as directed by the Act. Lastly, we encourage all departments that have frontline employees to join the Department of Health in KwaZulu-Natal and ensuring that the inherent dignity of deaf people are assured so that those that are at the front line point of providing services can speak to deaf people in sign language as that is their first language.
Honourable
and we
Deputy
congratulate
Minister,
the
your
department.
time is now expired.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes ministerial responses. The Secretary will read the first order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Public Works on Expropriation Bill.
I now recognize the Honourable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Honourable House Chairperson, I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? Are there any objections? There are objections. I put the question. Those in favour will say aye. And those against will say no. I think the ayes have it. The objection that was mooted will be recorded. The Secretary will read the second order.
Just do it on record that the FF is objecting to this report, Chair.
Will be noted.
Second reading debate, Expropriation Bill.
Honourable members, amendments to the bill have been proposed in terms of Assembly Rule 254 and has been published on the order paper. Members may address these amendments during the course of the debate on the Expropriation Bill.
House Chairperson.
Yes, Honourable Chief Whip.
I rise into Rule 254. The amendments, as far as I can see, but above the line. Oh, there they are. They're not above the line, though. They are much further down. So shouldn't they be lifted above the line for consideration in the House today?
What we will do is, Honourable Steenhuisen, indeed it will be considered. It will be part of the proceedings before we formally deal with the consideration of the Expropriation Bill. So we'll get to that point in terms of our procedure. I now recognize the Honourable the Minister of Public Works.
Thank you, House Chair.
Order, honourable members.
Honourable ministers and deputy ministers and honourable members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of the Expropriation Bill. Let me begin by briefly reminding the House why we need a new law on expropriation. Expropriation is recognized as an essential mechanism for the state to acquire property in certain instances, such as for essential infrastructure, land reform and conservation, and is thus protected by the Constitution. The general framework for expropriation is outlined in Section 25 of the Constitution, which provides that the property may be expropriated only in terms of a law of general application, and that no law may permit arbitrary deprivation of property. The Constitution further determines that expropriation may only occur for public purpose or in public interest and subject to the payment of compensation. The concept of public interest includes the nation's commitment to land reform, reforms to bring about equitable access for all South Africans to all South Africa's natural resources, and other forms to redress the results of the past racial discriminatory laws and practices. So the prevailing Expropriation Act of 1975 confers the powers to expropriate property for the public purpose on the Minister of Public Works, and generally sets out the procedures to be followed by expropriating authority when carrying out the expropriation. The review of the 1995 Expropriation Act became necessary to ensure consistency with the spirit and the provisions of the 1996 Constitution in particular, with the Equality Clause, with the Property Clause, with the need for just administrative action, as well as to extend the purpose for expropriation to include public interest. So the main changes are as follows then. The 1995 Act limits compensation to owners, holders of registered rights, and only holders of certain unregistered rights. Then Section 25 of the Constitution, however, requires compensation to be paid to all persons affected by expropriation. Compensation in terms of the 1975 Act is determined primarily on the basis of the market value. And Section 25 of the Constitution, however, requires that just and equitable compensation be paid, and that such compensation be determined by having regard to all relevant circumstances, and I want to underline, all relevant circumstances, without placing undue weight on any single factor like is happening now, where people just talk about the market value of the property. And I quote from the Constitution, relevant circumstances including A up to D, the current use of the property, B is the history of the acquisition and the use of the property, C, the market value of the property, D, the extent of the direct state investment and subsidy in the acquisition and beneficial capital improvement of the property, and E, the purpose of the expropriation. This bill is about equity given the history of dispossession and colonialism. The 1995 Act does not embody constitutional principles of just administrative action. Indeed, the 1995 Act is draconian in comparison to the new bill, which incorporates the constitutional principle of administrative justice. This principle of administrative justice is so important because you have all the rights, you can have all the rights, but if you do not have the tool to implement all these rights, will just remain paper rights. There is a long list of authorities within all the spheres of government that are empowered to expropriate property through the various pieces of legislation which prescribe varying procedures for expropriation. There is therefore the need to provide certainty to all the parties involved in an expropriation. The Expropriation Bill does not interfere with the powers of the existing expropriating authorities. Rather, the bill ensures that the procedures for all expropriations are uniform, consistent with the Constitution, and fair to all the parties. And I want to emphasize equity, equity, equity is very key in our country today. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. I now call upon the Honourable Martins.
Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Minister and Deputy Minister of Public Works, Honourable members of the House. One of the most fundamental historic injustices in South Africa was the systematic dispossession of black people in general and Africans in particular of their land by the 1913 Land Act, which spawned poverty, unemployment, and inequality in its wake. The plight of the Mngungundlovu land claimants of Mbizana in the Eastern Cape is an example of the bitter harvest of apartheid Bantustan policy. In 1978, the peasants, subsistence farmers, and villagers of the Wild Coast area of Mbizana were ordered to abandon their land and vacate their villages and to find themselves alternate places of abode. From 1979 to 1981, they were forcefully removed from their homes and not given alternative land to build themselves new homes. They were not compensated for their pastoral land, crops, and homes. The community ultimately settled on a rocky, infertile outpost of Mbizana and lived in grinding poverty and misery. Decisive action and effective radical economic transformation is required to address the injustices of the past. The Expropriation Bill is one of the measures by the ANC government to effect transformation in the national interest and to contribute to the eradication of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa of 1996 recognizes expropriation as an essential mechanism for the state to acquire property for a public purpose or in the public interest, subject to just and equitable compensation being paid. The Expropriation Act of 1975, Act number 63, predates the expropriation provision provided for in Section 25(2) of the Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law of South Africa. Legislation or conduct inconsistent with it is invalid, and the obligations it imposes must be fulfilled. At present, there are numerous authorities within all spheres of government which have the power to expropriate property through various pieces of legislation. There is thus a need to ensure uniformity in the manner organs of state undertake expropriation. The Expropriation Bill seeks to ensure consistency with the Constitution and uniformity of procedure of all expropriations without interfering with the powers of expropriating authorities. The objective of the bill is to align the Expropriation Act of 1975 with the Constitution and to provide a common framework to guide the processes and procedures for expropriation of property by organs of the state. The bill does not seek to interfere with the powers of expropriation conferred on provinces by specific legislation, but prescribes uniform procedures to be followed by all expropriating authorities when exercising their powers. The preamble of the bill in its entirety is the overarching framework which will govern the interpretation and implementation of the bill once it is enacted. The preamble is based on Section 25 of the 1996 Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, which under the heading Property stipulates, amongst others, the following. Section 25(1), no one may be deprived of property except in terms of law of general application, and no law may permit arbitrary deprivation of property. Section 25(2) states that property may be expropriated only in terms of law of general application, A, for a public purpose or in the public interest, and B, subject to compensation, the amount of which and time and manner of payment of which have either been agreed by those affected or decided upon by a court. Section 25(3) furthermore states the amount of compensation and the time and manner of payment must be just and equitable, reflecting an equitable balance between the public interest and the interests of those affected, having regard to all relevant circumstances. Section 25(4) stipulates, A, the public interest includes the nation's commitment to land reform and to reforms to bring about equitable access to all South Africa's natural resources, and B, property is not limited to land. Section 25(7), on the other hand, states a person or community dispossessed of property after the 19th of June 1913 as a result of past racially discriminatory laws or practices is entitled, to the extent provided by an Act of Parliament, either to restitution of that property or equitable redress. The Portfolio Committee on Public Works, in execution of its mandate, called for written submissions and received a total of 29 submissions from interested parties and organizations. The Portfolio Committee also held public hearings over several days. 9 individuals representing various organizations addressed the Portfolio Committee. The committee deliberated on the submissions it received. These deliberations resulted in the B version of the bill, namely the Expropriation Bill B4 of 2015, which the Portfolio Committee considered on the 26th of January 2016. The Portfolio Committee concluded its deliberations on the bill on the 2nd of February 2016. The bill was adopted with amendments. The objections raised by members are addenda to the Portfolio Committee report. The state law advisors are of the opinion that the bill must be dealt with in accordance with the procedure prescribed in Section 76(3) of the Constitution, since it, in substantial measure, falls within several of the areas of concurrence of national and provincial legislative competence listed in Schedule 4 of the Constitution. Honorable members, I recommend the bill to the House for adoption. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Kopane.
Ke a leboha motsamaisi wa dipuisano. Expropriation Bill has been a highly contentious bill, one which have ultimately decided to oppose. In principle, the idea of Expropriation Bill is something we do not oppose as a party. because it's mandated by the Constitution as set out in Section 25 thereof, which states, I quote, property may be expropriated only in terms of the law of general application for the public purpose or in the public interest and subject to the compensation, close quote. However, in the current form, we cannot allow this bill to be passed. The bill does not go far nearer to protect all citizens from a power-hungry government who would have the potential to abuse the right to expropriate to the detriment of the economy and all South Africans. There are many aspects of the bill which are of major concerns to us. Of a particular concern, it is the mechanism through which compensation is determined. In its current form, the bill ensures that specific circumstances are considered when determining the amount of compensation. However, Honorable Minister, you know that the bill is silent on who determines the nature and the extent of the considerations. It appears as if the expropriating authority, who will ultimately determine the consideration, which are, among others, the market value and the history of acquisition and the use of property. The question then arises whether the expropriating authority have the adequate skill to accurately and fairly determine the above-mentioned consideration. We suspect not, and this will surely lead to the property owners being financially disadvantaged. Furthermore, another major concern, it is the timing on when the right of possession passes. As it currently stands, the right of possession passes on the day stated in the notice of expropriation. In theory, one should receive compensation prior to the date so that the property owner has sufficient finances and to find alternative accommodation, which is simply logic and fair. However, there is no provision to ensure that those who are losing their property are paid compensation with a reasonable time prior to the state taking control of the property. This is inevitably lead to the instances where property owners are obliged to vacate their land but have not yet been paid the compensation, and thus they are unable to find alternative accommodation. Honorable House Chair, these are but few of the multitude of concerns we have regarding this bill in its current form. If the bill is passed today in this form, this will really have a detriment impact on the economy. It is essential that all citizens know their properties' rights are secured. Moreover, it is crucial for the foreign investment that property rights are secured. Without this knowledge, South Africa will no longer remain a desirable destination for the foreign investment. If the ANC-led government is serious about growing economy and creating the jobs, they will have no other choice but to refer this expropriation bill back to the drawing board so that the adequate balance it is met between the rights of the property owners and the government's rights to expropriate property in a public interest for the public purpose and upon just and equitable compensation. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Khawula.
Chair, I speak here on behalf of Commissar Marshall, who has since left to convene the election task force in eThekwini. The EFF is the only party that rejects this bill from a correct and progressive perspective. The fact of the matter is that the land was stolen by a white minority regime, and that those who currently occupy the land are occupying stolen property, stolen from the black majority. The EFF calls for the total expropriation of South African land without compensation, so we can restore the dignity of our people. Because as long as our people remain landless, we remain a conquered nation by the white people and their handlers, which is the white monopoly capital. We call for the expropriation of land without compensation so that we can grow our agricultural industry. Because as things currently stand, we are the net importers of food. That means we're a nation that cannot feed itself. When it comes to the issue of land in South Africa, we have two problems. The first problem is the white people who continue to occupy our land with no remorse. They do that because they know South Africa is a pretentious society. Even the reconciliation that they preach about, they know it's pretentious. South Africa is the only country that went to the war because of land. But when we achieve victory and freedom, instead of getting the land, we are rewarded by exchanging meals in restaurants with white people. As if that is what we fought for. If white people want to continue with these pretentious arrangements, they must speak to the ANC, because it's the only ANC who believe exchanging fake smiles with white in the corridors of this parliament is an achievement. White people who continue to occupy our land, white people who continue to run our economy, white people who continue to insult us and call us names, as if we are here to fight for our land and economy, and we know the enemy. Second problem is this useless ANC government that 11 million landless black South Africans voted them into power to pass laws that will restore their dignity. But they go to parliament and get excited by dining with white people and betray their voters. We're rejecting this bill as we don't believe it's done in the interest of majority citizens of this country who are black in particular. In 1913, under the colonial dispensation, a white man with a white advisor led a government delegation to pass laws that forcefully removed our people from their land. In 1948, the apartheid dispensation, they intensified their theft of our land. Under the ANC government, 22 years later into democracy, another white man called Jeremy Cronin, with a white advisor, were here today leading a government delegation that is here to pass the law that says government must pay for the land that is expropriated.
Order.
We say that because the former minister
of Finance... Will you just take your seat, please? What is the point of order, honourable member?
The member at the podium referred to Honourable Jeremy Cronin as Jeremy Cronin, and he still insulted him too. I think we have to just
honourable
check
member, continue, honourable member.
We say that because the former Minister of Finance, Nhlanhla, told this House that last year that South African government has reached its spending and borrowing capacity, which means they don't have money to buy land. When you go two contradicting views of the minister of the same government.
Order, honourable members, order.
You reach a stalemate, and when you reach a stalemate, the status quo remains. The current status now is that 2 million white people own 79% of South African land, and 42 million blacks only own 8% of the land. We're also rejecting this bill because it's contradiction with Section 25(3)(c) of the Constitution, which clearly states that before you compensate, you must determine the value, how the land was acquired. The South African history tells us that the land was stolen by white people from black people. The only same thing we should be doing today is
honourable
to advocate
member, your
for
time is now
review,
expired.
and we amend Section 25 of the Constitution and stop playing games. Amanda.
The next speaker is the Honourable Sitole. Order, honourable members. Order. Honourable members. Order, honourable members. Honourable members, both from the ANC and from the EFF. Order, honourable members. Order, honourable members. Continue, honourable member. Continue, honourable member.
Honourable House Chairperson, at the outset, let me state that the Inkatha Freedom Party support this bill, but just two reservations. It is a bill which passed into law with confessed, sweeping and almost arbitrary powers through which government can expropriate land in the public interest or for public purposes. In other words, it means an extremely contentious processes. We support the bill because we recognize the urgent attention that this issue is required. It is both necessary and long overdue, as this government has deliberately addressed the issues of over the past 20 years. It must be remembered that this bill seeks to repeal the Expropriation Act of 1975. Honourable House Chair, the needs of landless community in South Africa must be addressed. Government, it seems to still has no plan to accommodate tenants and farm workers. some whom are 30 generation tenants, which nowhere else to go when they're evicted by landowners. This is the power kick of contention, which must not be allowed to explode. We already see strained relations and farm matters taking place over land issues. This requires urgent attention. Adding to this are government delays in buying land that is freely and readily available on the market. This means farms lie fallow and lose their value, making it too costly to new owners to make them farm financially viable. Farms when fail, but with government that help them, such failure. Returning to the bill, we have reservation with its drafting, namely the ambiguity and vigorous of essentially a section which could open up a veil for litigations, in terms of would we only delay the purpose of the bill. In respect of compensation paid to expropriated land owners, we remain of the firm resolve that this must be of the fair market value. Honourable Speaker, expropriation terminates use and ownership of land. However, that can be expropriated owner be expected to remain financially responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of proper after expropriations. We also state once again that the land of traditional communities should be seen as already perfectly allocated and should not be part of the land programs aimed at distribution and restitutions. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mabika.
Honourable Chairperson, the expropriation bill in its current form before us has been tabled by the Minister with the intention to speed up the land reform. The current track record of land reform, however, shows that almost 73% of all projects have failed. Our government has spent billions of rands to buy land for reform purposes, but then failed to empower the newly and emergent farmers through knowledge and technical assistance. This failure has resulted in productive farms now being unproductive and emergent farmers feeling they have failed, whereas it is the government that has failed them. So the failure of our land reform program is not only due to availability of land, but also due to the failure of the government to understand that land reform is more than just about land. It is about resources, knowledge, skill transfers, and technical assistance. As long as the ANC fail to comprehend this, our land reform program will continue to fall short of expectations and aspirations of our people. The bill, according to Honourable Minister of Public Works, will also facilitate the speeding up of infrastructure programs. The National Freedom Party is fully in support of any program of action to speed up infrastructure development because we are serious about service delivery to our people. However, we question whether the expropriation bill will succeed in this regard. The current ANC government is failing to deliver services and develop infrastructure because of the incompetence of its officials and the confusion in its policies. For as long as the ANC remains in power, the people will continue to suffer from lack of service and infrastructure because ANC cadre deployment will continue to fail them. What we as the NFP find most alarming is that the bill will give the state the power to take property upfront by notice of expropriation and without an order of the court. There are not sufficient safeguards in the bill to protect people from greedy individuals in government, and we may find a land grab by ruling a political elite on a scale unimagined. Honourable Chair, we firmly believe that any decision to expropriate property from any South African should be subject to an order of the court. With the rampant corruption in government and incompetence of the ANC deployed cadres, expropriation of private property cannot be left in the hands of political aligned individuals. Our people need protection against abuse of power, and the bill in its current form falls far short of the ideal. In conclusion, Chairperson, the National Freedom Party has serious reservation about Expropriation Bill in its current form, but despite our caution, we will support the bill. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Fultane.
The bill lacks constitutional compliance. Chapter 2, Section 9, subsection 3 of the Constitution states, the state may not unfairly discriminate directly or indirectly against anyone on one or more grounds, including race. I've just spoken to the people of Bizana, Honourable Chair, just now, and they confirmed that in spite of the promises even by the current government, they are still owed money by government. So you don't want to trust government when it comes to promising to compensate people. Most relevant here is the Section 25, which states a person or community dispossessed of property after 19th June 1913 as a result of past racially discriminatory laws or practices is entitled to the extent provided by an Act of Parliament, either to restitution of that property or to equitable redress. I may as well, and of importance, refer to subsection 8, which provides no provision of this section may impede the state from taking legislative or other measures to achieve land, water, and related reforms in order to redress the results of past racial discrimination. Now, the balance of the bill currently debated seems to lean more towards the provisions of Section 25(7), to the extent that it may, by default, border on not satisfying the provisions of Section 9(3).
Honourable Fultane, can you just take your seat, please? Honourable members, there's too many meetings taking place here in the House. That is quite audible, and it makes it difficult to follow the speaker in front. Let's show some respect to the speaker at the podium and allow him to be heard, please. Continue, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Chair. Now, may border on not satisfying the provisions of Section 9(3), read together with Section 25(8) of the Constitution. This being the case, we argue that the bill requires to be balanced such that it does not exclude the people whose property were dispossessed before 1913. This may be contrary to the provisions of Section 9(2) of the Constitution. In any event, as it may be, substantial amount of property was dispossessed before the 19th of June 1913. So if the bill passes in its current form, it means people who acquired land in South Africa before 1913, you can never touch that land. People who were dispossessed of land before 1913, they can never be redressed. Their problem can never be addressed by government. So consider your verdicts. Don't just vote just because you belong to a certain political party. By accepting the bill as it is, the government would unintentionally and unavoidably exclude all ownership of unregistered ownership before 1913. Towards the end, Chair, I want to say the second important part is that the regulatory impact assessment has not been done. So even if this bill is passed, there is no guarantee that the department would have the money for acquiring the land. So it would be an exercise in futility. Consider your judgment. Lastly, the people are not being given a fair chance. When the government wants to expropriate under urgent circumstances, it gives them 20 days. But the people have got an even shorter period of time. So again, on the basis of unconstitutionality...
Honourable Member, your time is now expired.
We cannot support it in its current form. Thank you.
Honourable Groenewald.
Agbare voorzitter, laat ek ter aanvang sê dat die Vryheidsfront Plus verwerp hierdie wetsontwerp. Ons verwerp selfs dat dit enigstens wenslik is om so 'n wet in hierdie parlement te debatteer. Hierdie wetsontwerp is slegte nuus vir grondeienaars in Suid-Afrika. Dit is algemeen in die wêreld dat daar so iets soos 'n onteieningswet is. En ons het so 'n wet gehad, maar hierdie wet herroep die vorige wet. En die groot verskil is daarin dat wette in die wêreld wat gaan oor onteiening gewoonlik sê dat dit 'n doel het om grond te onteien in belang van openbare gebruik. As jy 'n brug wil bou of 'n pad of wat ook al. In hierdie geval waar ons nou met hierdie wetsontwerp sit, het ons 'n tweede aspek by naamlik dat dit ook in openbare belang kan wees. En ja, voorsitter, ek weet, dit is binne die perke en aspekte van artikel 25 van die grondwet, wat sê dat dit spesifiek ook aangewend kan word vir grondhervorming in Suid-Afrika. Ek wil ook vandag laat die mense en elke grondeienaar in Suid-Afrika moet weet, dat hierdie wet is die voorlaaste wet waar grondgrype in Suid-Afrika op 'n wettige manier gedoen gaan word. In Zimbabwe het hulle dit onwettig gedoen. In Suid-Afrika wil die ANC-regering grondgrype wettig doen. Die agbare president het in sy staatsrede gesê dat hulle is besig met die voorbereiding van 'n wetsontwerp met die naam van die regulering van grondbesit. Die kern daarvan sal wees dat daar 'n beperking geplaas sal word op hoeveel grond jy mag hê. 5000 hektaar en in uitsonderlike gevalle 12000 hektaar. En dan sê dit uitdruklik, as jy meer grond as dit het, sal dit onteien word. So hierdie is die voorlaaste wet. Hierdie wet moet in sy plek wees, sodat die volgende wet wat gaan kom, net eenvoudig dan deurgevoer kan word, wat jou grond van jou weggeneem sal word. Dis wettige grondgrype deur die regering. Agbare voorsitter, daar's baie aspekte, tegniese dinge wat bespreek kan word. Byvoorbeeld die definisie van grond. Ja, dis wyd, maar dis die definisie in artikel 25 van die grondwet. En ek hoop die instellings, veral die F.W. de Klerk instituut of instelling, sal hierdie saak na die grondwet hof toe gaan. Want hulle vertel vir die mense dis ongrondwetlik. Kom ons toets dit in die grondwethof. Laastens, voorsitter, die EFF wat die hele tyd net kom met hulle beheptheid van die wit is uit die grond gesteel. Almal weer is onwaar. Maar die probleem is net, ek gaan nie nou in daai debat nie, want u weet, agbare voorsitter, daar's 'n spreekwoord wat sê,
Agbare lid, u tyd is verstreke.
kan ek net sê, 'n generaal klim nie van sy perd af vir elke brakkie wat vir hom blaf nie. So hou op blaf. Dankie.
The next speaker is the Honourable Carter.
Dankie, voorsitter. The word expropriate simply means to deprive an owner of property. South Africa is a constitutional democracy and has its cornerstone a Bill of Rights which enshrines right to property. The Constitution also provides for expropriation by the state, subject to limitations. While scope is supportive of a need for the state to expropriate private immovable property, it must be done lawfully and within the prescripts of our Constitution. The purpose of this bill in its present format is to authorize the state, by means of a simple notice, to expropriate private property when it is deemed to be in the public interest. In essence, the state, be it national, provincial or local, state-owned entities such as Eskom and Telkom, and other state entities and agencies would be empowered to expropriate any land, including residential, business, agricultural, and mining, without regard to the common land and our Constitution, by an administrative order without an appropriate court order. It places the onus on the landowner to seek redress and relief from a court at great personal expense where this proposed power is abused. The question is, what in the case if a landowner cannot afford the legal costs? As the bill reads, the state is also empowered to unilaterally determine the amount of compensation without taking into consideration, for example, any registered bonds on the property and the financial loss that can incur to the owner or to the banks. That is a concern. COPE considers the current bill unconstitutional and it allows the state to expropriate property by simple government notice without an order of a court. In a time when we as a nation are trying to starve off the real threat of being relegated to a junk status, when we are trying to create an environment conducive to economic growth and job creation and policy certainty, the ruling party, in their wisdom, propose that Parliament adopts an expropriation bill that contains questionable constitutional provisions. A bill that facilitates the possibility for the unchecked abuse of power and authority to expropriate private property. What happens in the event of constructive expropriation where restrictions are placed on land usage? We cannot say it's not going to happen. We've seen what party politics does. The bill should be referred back and the constitutionality of its provisions should be verified and revised. Definitions should be re-looked at, especially the definitions that was placed in by the Portfolio Committee. The time for playing party electoral politics
Honourable
is
Member,
over,
your time
as we endeavour
has
to create
expired.
an environment for investor confidence. I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Dudley.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Speedy land reform and infrastructure development, both worthy goals, are being unwisely used to condone the dismantling of constitutional protections from state abuse. My honourable colleagues in the ANC and the IFP, would you really like to see this legislation in the hands of, say, an EFF government or even a DA one? This 2015 Expropriation Bill empowers both the Minister
Order,
of
honourable
Public
members.
Works. Look, these protections are not there for a select few, but for all of South Africa, for all in South Africa who own or aspire to owning property. This 2015 Expropriation Bill empowers both the Minister of Public Works and all organs of state to expropriate property for public purposes or in the public interest. It seeks to allow any expropriating authority to take property by simply serving a notice of expropriation on the owner, with ownership then passing automatically to the state on the date of expropriation in the notice. Now, while the amount of compensation must be included in the notice of expropriation, an owner who objects and does not start court proceedings contesting the amount within 60 days will be deemed to have accepted the offer. If a magistrate's court or high court decides on a smaller amount, the compensation then offered, the owner then has to pay all the legal costs, which will be deducted from the compensation. So only the very, very wealthy could even consider taking this kind of risk. So any state offer would, for most people, amount to an offer which cannot be refused. Our Constitution does make provision for expropriation, an instrument used throughout the centuries by countries worldwide. It is, however, accepted that expropriation is never done lightly. It is the exception rather than the rule. Under the common law, the state cannot simply seize property without obtaining a court order, and the Constitution strengthened these common law protections. With the passing of this bill today, expropriation without reasonable legal protection against abuse is no longer just a threat to those in the agricultural sector, as this bill gives all state entities the power to take from churches, banks, commercial businesses, food producers, miners, and ordinary people with no guarantee of fair compensation. The expropriation bill as it stands creates insecurity. Rushed through without safeguards for home, land, and factory owners of all races, it will only create more financial mayhem with unthinkable consequences for the rand. Government would be wise to look north and think again. The ACDP has called for the creation of a specifically dedicated valuations court, which would be required to sign off on all determinations on compensation to be paid to property owners in the event of forced expropriation. The ACDP also calls on this House today not to pass this bill before amending it to, at the very least, require the court to approve compensation in cases of forced expropriation, and I thank you.
The next speaker is the Honourable Adams.
Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, members of the National Assembly, ladies and gentlemen. The ANC remains committed to dealing with the century-old injustice that rendered the majority of our people farriers in the land of our birds. The heinous 1913 Land Act and the resultant land dispossession directly contributed to the ongoing problems of poverty. And I can remember it clearly because I was a victim of that. As a 13-year-old boy coming from school in District 6, 13-year-old boy coming from school in District 6, seeing that our furniture had been uploaded onto a white truck, driven by a white Afrikaner male, very rude to my parents, not even allowing us boxes to pack our clothes and all that. The Honourable Waters, we were just dumped in Lavender Hill. Lavender Hill, we were dumped. So you cannot forget the past and the injustice that has been done. And that's why the DA still likes to cling on to the 1975 Verwoerdian, Paul Kruger, and P.W. Botha Act of the Expropriation Bill. They still want to cling because they still want to benefit that.
Order,
they still
honourable
want
members.
to benefit. Yeah, they still want to benefit that. It is against this backdrop that the ANC government.
Honourable Adams, will you just take a seat, please? Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
Chairperson, I believe the Honourable Adams is very confused. He was the one that
Why
joined the National
Why are you
Party,
rising,
not us.
Honourable Member? Continue, Honourable Adams.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me just correct the Honourable Waters. Yes, Chairperson, that's why I'm titling it Out with the Old, In with the New. Because that time I was a member of the National Party. But I've seen the light and come home.
Order,
Chairperson,
honourable members.
they forget all the nationalists sitting in their ranks that benefited from the 1975 bill. They forget that most of the National Party members that's in their rank, that's why they are here today. With the help of the National Party, they even came to the ANC to say, open up this walkover clause so that members can walk over, so that we can form one party. And what was the party about? To fight black discrimination, to fight against blacks. That's why they came out with Swart Gevaar. They came out, and still today they're having Swart Gevaar in their midst. Till today they're running their campaigns on Swart Gevaar. You know that, Honourable Waters. You know that as well as everyone else in this room knows it. So that's why, Honourable, in your own ranks, people are saying, let's move out, because we don't want to be used by the black man, by the white man anymore. We don't want to be used by the white man anymore. You know that. You know that the National Party put you into power. And what was it for?
Honourable Adams, will you just take your seat? Why are you rising, Honourable Member? Order, Honourable Members.
Achtbare voorsitter, op punt van orde.
What is the point of order?
Ek wil weet of dit parlementair is. Dat 'n achtbare lid daar kan staan, sy bloeddruk so opjag dat 'n hartaanval kan kry.
Honourable Member, you know that's not a point of order. You know that.
Don't worry, Chairperson. I want to reassure Honourable Groenewald that we've got doctors in the House. Once there is on one of the resolutions or from the ANC 52nd
Honourable
conference.
Adams, will you take your seat, please? Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
Chair, if the Honourable Member acknowledges that the land was stolen,
No, Honourable Member,
is
that's
he
not
buying
a point
back
of
the land?
order. Take your seat.
Why is buying back the land?
Take your seat. Honourable Members, let me caution you not to deliberately disrupt the Speaker at the podium with spurious points of order. It's a debate. Whether you like what the members say or not, that's immaterial. It's a view. Continue, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Chairperson. One of the resolutions from the ANC 52nd conference in Polokwane was to call for the expropriation of property in the public interest for public purpose in accordance with the Constitution in order to achieve equity, redress, social justice and sustainable development. We depart from the premise that South Africa's Constitution is the supreme law of this country. Any piece of legislation that exists that is inconsistent with it is invalid. The authoritative terms of Section 2 of the Constitution strengthen the case for the redrafting of the Expropriation Act in order to ensure consistency with the spirit and provisions of the Constitution. The provisions of the Constitution alluded to are the rights to equality, Section 9, property rights, Section 25, access to information, Section 32, and unlawful, reasonable, and procedurally fair administrative decision-making, Section 33. The Expropriation Act of 1975, which the DA loves so much, and is not only outdated, but it is also not harmonious with our Constitution. In fact, to put it blunt, it is draconian, as the Minister has also alluded to that. The arbitrariness in the exercise of power granted authorities unfettered discretion. Our Constitution clearly states that no one may be deprived of property except in terms of law of general application, and no law may permit arbitrary deprivation of property. It goes further and mandates the state to take reasonable legislation and other measures within its available resources to foster conditions which enable citizens to gain access to land on an equitable basis. Of course, our Constitution does put it clear that property is not limited to land. Our Constitution in Section 9(1) states explicitly that everyone is equal before the law and has the right to equal protection and benefit of the law. In subsection 2 of the same Section 9, it states in part that equality includes the full and equal employment of all rights and freedom. You know, honorable members, as we look where the DA govern in the Western Cape, we are talking about rights and freedom. We've got pieces of land in Masipumalele, which is a suburb in Noordhoek, honorable chairperson, where people's houses are being burned down every second month. 148 hectares, which the mayor of Cape Town promised. The premier now, was then the mayor of Cape Town, went to promise his people there that we'll build houses. But for the protection of the DA's voterate and electorate, they need to protect the wealthy in Noordhoek, because once they're going to start building and give that land to the Masipumalele squatters, they will block the way of the wealthy people that build their houses there. Yeah, even in yesterday's August, they were saying that the land in Somerset Hospital, they don't want to give away. They either want to sell it off, the Honorable Van der Walt. They want to sell it off, Chairperson, to those people that have. What about the have-nots? What about the have-nots? Rightly, as someone said last week, you only want black votes, but black lives doesn't matter. The road we've traveled this far to get where we are with this bill today was fairly lengthy, necessarily so, because our aim is to produce a constitutionally compliant act. If the comments we got during the public hearings are anything to go by, we strongly believe that we have struck a right chord. The bill that is presented here is indeed a cutting edge. That's why they are referring to the National Party. They can't live beyond the past. They can't live in the future. They're living with the dead. That's why they still long for them to come back. That's why they still long for them to be back. Because you can't move out of the old and move into the future. You are stuck in the past. You are stuck in the past. In Section 3, in Section 31, our Constitution is clear. It says everyone has the right to administrative action that is lawful, reasonable, and procedurally fair. Section 33(3), which states in part, national legislation must be enacted to give effect to these rights and must provide for the review of administrative action by a court or, where appropriate, an independent and impartial tribunal. And this subsection is reinforced by Section 34, which states everyone has the right to have any different dispute that can be resolved by the application of law, decided in a fair public hearing before a court or, where appropriate, another independent and impartial tribunal or forum. We now have a bill that has got all checks and balances. And if my mind clearly remembers, then I know it was the then National Party and DP component, which formed the DA, that begged the ANC to write checks and balances into the Constitution. And that checks and balances is today in the Constitution. And today, you guys that has begged the ANC, you have begged the ANC for that checks and balances. Today, you are crying foul over that. Have your facts checked, Honorable Waters, through you, Chairperson. Has your facts checked. In this bill, when an expropriating authority is considering the expropriation of property, he or she must, amongst others, ascertain the suitability of the property for the purpose for which it is required and the existence of registered and unregistered rights in such property and the impact of such rights or the intended use of the property. Really, this is meticulous. A valuer and other specialists shall also be authorized for purposes of ascertaining the value of the property, to do necessary inspection and investigation. After necessary information has been established, the expropriating authority issues out a notice of contemplated expropriation.
That notice must contain reason for the intended expropriation of that particular property. For example, the property which will be used for public purpose, to build a dam or to construct a road. Not only that, the bill also allows any person who may be affected to lodge any objection to the intended expropriation. Further, it ensures that someone whose rights are about to be adversely affected, his or her views are heard. Not like in the Western Cape where views doesn't count. Views are not being heard of. Here, the views of the people of Camps Bay, Buckowen are being made. What does the DA does? They reject that views because they want to please their electorate. Now I want to put a question. I wonder how many of you have got property in London? How many of you have got property in Europe? Because you know you can't buy property there. It's either lease or freehold. But here you want to say, whenever our president said no foreigners can own property, you want to kick up the bucket and kick up the storm. With that in mind, the ANC had made progress with the promulgation of the Property Valuation Act and the establishment of the Office of the Valuer General, completed in October 2012. The ANC's 53rd conference in Mangaung has resolved that the principle of just and equitable compensation should be in line with the Constitution. Clauses 12 to 20 of the bill deal with the determination and payment of compensation to persons whose property rights are expropriated. The order derived from our Constitution is that the state must come up with necessary legislation. Critically, the legislation drafted must not be in conflict with the Constitution. Given the respect we have for the Constitution, we followed its instructions. It was never our instruction to rewrite the Constitution or fight it like some parties does that in the House. We are not enemies of the Constitution. We are not enemies of the Constitution. That is why we cannot say expropriation without compensation, when constitutionally says clearly that property may be expropriated only in terms of laws of general application for a public purpose and in the public interest, subject to compensation, which must be just and equitable. If the expropriation authority does not accept the amount claimed by a claimant, the expropriating authority must make an offer of just and equitable compensation to the claimant, furnishing all full particulars of how such amount is made up and calculated. An amount asked for by the claimant must be just and equitable, and particulars demonstrating as to how that claim was calculated and reached must be made available to the expropriating authority. The bill creates two types of redress mechanism. In the disagreements, namely mediation or litigation, formal and informal resolution to dispute could be explored and entered to. The bill does make mention of mediation. If the parties agree to it, they fail to take it to court. That is how the ANC deals. Fairness, not like the DA or like some other parties whose leader criticizes in South Africa, but then goes abroad and wine and dine with the capitalist abroad in London. Wine and dine and go and collect and beg for money abroad for the capitalists. They can approach a competent court to decide or approve just and equitable compensation. Actually, on any matter relating to the application of this act, an aggrieved party may approach the court. We are aware as
Honourable Adams, will you take your seat, please? Yes, Honourable Member, why are you rising?
Can the member take a question?
Honourable Adams, are you prepared to take a question?
No, Chair.
The Honourable Member is not prepared to take a question.
You mustn't buy back the land.
Take your seat, Honourable Member. Continue, Honourable Adams.
We are aware of, as the ANC, about the resistance by the opposition parties, including groups and sections of society that oppose transformation and that are comfortable with the status quo. I think that the Honourable Member needs or owes South Africa an answer. We must ask them the question why the leader goes to London and wine and dine with capitalists and criticize them in his own home and his own home. This will not make them to stall the process aimed at
Honourable Adams, let me take this point of order. Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
I just want to check, Honourable Chair, if the member is willing to take a question.
Honourable Adams, are you prepared to take a question from the member?
No, Chair.
No, the member is not prepared to take a question. Take your seat, please.
Order, Chair.
Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
This member must stop to be jealous.
No, Honourable
because
Member,
CIC was invited
that's
there,
not-
and we speak our
Take your
minds there
seat,
without a
Honourable
favor.
Member.
Stop being jealous.
Continue, Honourable Adams.
You don't have to give the answer to me. Give it to South Africa.
On a point
This
of
will
order.
not make them to stall the process
House
aimed
Chair.
at achieving the objectives of
House
the National
Chair.
Democratic Revolution. Therefore, the African National
Honourable
Congress
Adams.
supports the bill. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
House Chair,
Yes, Honourable Member.
on order.
What is the point of order?
The member from the African National Congress knows exactly that the ANC
Honourable
benefited.
Member.
They
What
had
is the
money.
point of order?
They were given money from
That's
abroad
not
to
a
fight
point of
apartheid.
order. Take your seat,
and we
please.
are not taking any money from abroad. You got money
The
from
Honourable
abroad
Jafta.
to fight apartheid. We will be very lucky if we receive money to fight you.
Thank
to
you.
fight you.
Take your seat, Honourable Member.
Disgusting.
Continue, Honourable Jafta. Order, members. Order, Honourable members.
Honorable Chairperson,
Order, Honourable members.
any government or state
Order, Honourable members.
with political history similar to ours here in South Africa, and with the intention to redress imbalances of the past, is obliged in one way or another to take over properties which are privately owned, if that is for the benefit or in the interest of the public. The Expropriation Bill 2015, Honourable Chairperson, seeks exactly to do the same thing, to give the state the power to expropriate privately owned properties, mainly for the public purpose or in the public interest. We know, Honourable Chairperson, that it is not feasible to list every circumstance in which the state may take private property in the public interest. Therefore, the bill should include all the efforts to define expropriation and place boundaries on the scope of the public interest. Honourable Chairperson, although this bill takes into consideration the history of acquisition, the AIC views it as non-discriminatory. It establishes the right to adequate compensation, and it also allows for an appeal processes to take place. We see it as something that will foster national unity and reconciliation among South Africans and give confirmation to that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. In some expropriation cases, the modalities may go beyond financial compensation. Those also need to be considered. While the AIC supports the equitable distribution and use of properties in the country, we are also against the violation of human rights of other individuals or groups. We therefore, Honourable Chairperson, support the Expropriation Bill as we see it as necessary to unite the nation like ours, which is scared by the past political conflicts. We also urge all political parties to support this bill, as it means that states will have peaceful and lawful processes of taking over privately owned properties, but doing that, Honourable Chairperson, in the public purposes. I thank you.
The Honourable Mbinda.
Honourable Chair, Honourable Mulder, the history of the land repossession, it took place as far back as even before 1652. So it was grabbed. There were wars of resistance, in case you have forgotten that. Majority of the land in this country is privately owned, even by foreigners. Even after 21 years of democracy, only 9% is redistributed to the indigenous people. The PAC has always been very critical of the outlook, interpretation, and the implication of Section 25 of our Constitution. This has always been guided by our political understanding. understanding of how it came to exist. We said it previously, we will continue to say that ICODESA and all other related negotiations was a compromise to the interest of the working class in this country. Honorable Chair, history keeps on reminding us all how disposition was conducted, and that is through illegal and forceful means, characterized by mass genocides of our people. Today is 21 years since '94, and we are here in Parliament to legitimize the stolen property. What a shame to our nation. Our people remain landless and homeless, while hectares and hectares of this land is privately owned by individuals who remain beneficiaries of colonialization of white monopoly capital. Honorable Chair, we must be taking the prosecution of those responsible for apartheid crimes and not compensating beneficiaries of the crimes of apartheid. The ruling party must revisit its priorities in as far as the development of our people is concerned. And the billions and billions of rands cannot be used to compensate the people that have stolen, but instead it must be used at least to cater for free education. The people of South Africa need jobs, and as PAC we remain adamant that the expropriation of land is long overdue, and we welcome the fact that the ruling party now sees the need to expropriate after years of political reluctance. It is our wish and hope that this aspect of compensation in the bill be revised with special reference to the historic background of the ownership. However, it remains our belief that land must be expropriated without any compensation.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Dreyer.
Mr. House Chairperson, considering the fact that the bill under consideration is a very controversial bill, the Portfolio Committee on Public Works functioned remarkably well. This is largely due to the patience and fairness of the chairman, Mr. Ben Martens, who allowed all views to be heard in a tolerant and friendly manner. This contributed to a constructive atmosphere throughout the deliberations. And perhaps that's why Member Freddie Adams is not the chairperson of that committee. The committee did hold public hearings, which were well attended, and a variety of organizations made useful presentations. Deputy Minister Jeremy Cronin attended all those hearings and throughout indicated his willingness to take on board various proposals. And indeed, during the deliberations in the committee, the ANC agreed to many of the DA's recommendations. Cool heads have prevailed with when we're dealing with controversial matters. The bill has had a long and arduous journey before it got here today. It has been in the pipeline since 2008. It was withdrawn twice and submitted a third time in Parliament in February 2015 after it's been substantially amended. And I want to thank the Minister, Nkesi, for explaining the bill in broad terms to us, and he's not even listening. However, although the bill has undergone many amendments, I've just thanked you, Minister, certainly resulting in an improved version of the original bill, there are still serious concerns about this bill. And I want to say to Mr. Martens, who also raised the matter of the systematic dispossession of land in the past, that was an unjust system. Mr. Martens, we agree with you. It was unjust. It can never be justified. But that is exactly why we have to ensure it never happens again. No government should be allowed to dispossess people of land without just and equitable compensation. Once was once too many. In democratic countries with vibrant and growing
Honourable
economies...
Dreyer, will you take a seat, please? Honourable Deputy Minister, why are you rising?
I wanted to know whether the member can take a question.
Honourable Member, are you prepared to take a question?
after my speech.
There's an indication the member will do so if she has time left at the end of her speech. Thank you. Continue, Honourable Member.
In democratic countries with vibrant and growing economies, the right to private property is respected. Security of property rights creates favourable conditions for investors because they are confident that their capital will be safe. This helps the economy to grow and to create jobs. And President Zuma knows that South Africa needs to grow its economy. During the SONA debate, he said, to achieve our objectives of creating jobs, reducing inequality and pushing back the frontiers of poverty, we need faster growth. However, the bill before this House today will not help to achieve this goal of faster growth. On the contrary. Why do I say this? There are 5 key principles at stake here. And unlike Member Adams, who was here to incite people and incite racial violence here, I just want to say I'm going to give rational arguments for our argument. But Mr. Adams did seem to know an awful lot about the old NP, and maybe that's because he learned at the feet of P.W. Botha. But we do have a saying in Afrikaans that leë blikke maak die meeste lawaai. We know who made the most noise here today.
Point of order.
Honourable Dreyer, will you take your seat? What is the point of order, Honourable Member?
Honourable Dreyer is misleading the House. I've never worked with Mr. Botha.
Take your seat, Honourable Member. Continue, Honourable Dreyer.
The first principle that we have to look at is that for economic growth and investment to take place, there must be certainty about what is understood with property. In this bill, property is simply defined as not limited to land. This is not a clear definition and is wide open to interpretation, creating the potential for abuse by any power-hungry government. Citizens need to be protected against the abuse by governments. For example, does this definition, so-called definition, mean intangible property like pension funds, shares, patent rights, and other intellectual property? Or movable property like taxi fleets, cattle, and other farming stock? Could that also be expropriated? Yes, Mr. Dlamini is not here today, but Mr. Davula spoke on his part. It could be your cows that they want to expropriate without compensation. This is a threat to all citizens, whether you're a commercial farmer, a developing farmer, or a taxi owner. Mr. Chairperson, if you're not sure that your property is safe from the long fingers of government, you will not invest. In fact, you may take your investment away and go somewhere else where it is safe. The second principle is that the scope of expropriation must be limited. In this bill before us, expropriation is too vague. For example, government has been taking custodianship of property. This is a deprivation of property, but because it's not regarded as expropriation, no compensation is paid. So because of the uncertainty about what is meant by property, and because custodianship of property is not regarded as expropriation, we believe this bill will compromise the security of property rights. It will create uncertainty in the markets and a loss of confidence among investors. It will lead to a loss of investment and capital flight. It will weaken an already fragile economy and result in even further job losses. South Africa cannot afford this. During the SONA debate, President Zuma also said it's important to act decisively to remove domestic constraints to growth. We cannot change the global economic conditions, but we can do a lot to change the local conditions. Mr. Chairperson, let us change the local conditions to make South Africa an attractive destination and send this bill back. A third and key principle in any bill is that the letter and spirit of the Constitution must apply. We believe that this bill is at odds with the Constitution. The state does not have the power and have unlimited power, and the new bill provides expropriating authorities with powers that appear to exceed those contained in the Constitution. And my colleague Member Patricia Kopani expanded on this, and there were also other members from the UDM and the ACDP who expanded on this principle. So I will not go further on that one. Just to say that if left unchecked, this will do great damage to the already strained economy by increasing risk and uncertainty for investors and spurring on disinvestment. Again, this will cost South Africa more jobs. Therefore, Parliament must satisfy itself that the bill is indeed consistent with the Constitution. The fourth principle is to determine just and equitable compensation to owners. It is of serious concern that land may be expropriated at potentially less than the amount owed to a bank or another financial institution through a mortgage bond. This places banks and property owners in a very difficult situation where loans cannot be seen as properly secured. And Mr. Martins, it's because of the importance of proper compensation that we propose in one of our amendments that we must strengthen that clause, just and equitable compensation. The last principle is that a socio-economic impact assessment must be done. And during the SONA debate, again, President Zuma announced that from 1 September 2016, all future legislation and regulations will be subject to a socio-economic impact assessment before being passed. This is an excellent proposal, and I only ask, why wait until then? Let's do it straight away, while this bill is still a bill and it hasn't been enacted. Mr. Chairman, I conclude in my mother tongue. Tydens die staatsrede debat beklemtoon president Zuma telkens dat die ekonomie moet groei. Ons stem almal saam. Om dit te bewerkstellig is beleggers vertroue egter noodsaaklik. En hierdie vertroue word slegs geskep deur sekerheid oor eiendomsreg. Privaat eiendomsreg is die hoeksteen van 'n gesonde en groeiende ekonomie. Maar onder die ANC-regering gebeur die teenoorgestelde. Die ANC wil al meer grond in die staat se naam kry, soos met hierdie wet en ook ander beoog word. Dit lei tot 'n gebrek aan vertroue by beleggers en twyfel ontstaan oor die sekerheid van eiendomsreg. Dit is 'n resep vir stagnasie en uiteindelike agteruitgang van die ekonomie. Maar terwyl die ANC eiendomsreg verwater, wil die DA, waar ons ook al regeer, eiendomsreg verstewig vir al die mense. En weer eens, meneer Adams, hier is die feite oor Kaapstad. Die DA beheerde administrasie in Kaapstad het oor die afgelope 3 jaar reeds 14.200 titelaktes aan huiseienaars oorgedra. 'n verdere 10.000 oordragte vind binnekort plaas. Sodoende word mense se huise 'n ekonomiese bate waarmee hulle kan woeker. Hierdie nuwe huiseienaars verdien egter, soos alle ander eienaars, gemoedsrus dat hulle eiendom veilig is teen die lang vingers van 'n oneerlike en 'n beheervraat van 'n staat. Die DA is teen hierdie wet gekant. Mr. Chairperson, and with your permission, I will now table the amendments that the DA has proposed, and I want to read it to you on clause 7 on page 5, line 5, after surveyed, to insert by a competent person. Clause 2 on page 6 in line 35 to omit may and to substitute shall. Clause 7, page 11.
Honourable Dreyer, will you take your seat? Why are you rising, Honourable Deputy Minister?
On the question on Paul Krug, I was promised by
No, Honourable Deputy Minister. Honourable Deputy Minister, will you take your seat? Please continue, Honourable Dreyer. She's still busy with the speech, Honourable Deputy Minister.
In clause 7, page 11 and
Honourable Dreyer, can you just take your seat again, please? Yes, Honourable Member.
We didn't hear what the Deputy Minister was saying.
No, we are not going to go into that. Take your seat, Honourable Members. Continue, Honourable Dreyer.
Clause 7, page 11, in line 15, line 2, to omit a reasonable time and to substitute 20 days. Clause 11, page 14, line 15, after compensation to insert that is just and equitable. Clause 23, that is on page 20, and line 32, after withdrawal, to add, in such event, the expropriating authority shall make payment of the amount claimed by the claimant for all reasonable costs and damages incurred within 40 days from the date the claim was delivered to the expropriating authority by the claimant. I so move.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Honourable Madlopa.
Honourable House Chair, the ministers and deputy ministers present, honourable members, comrades, guests in the gallery, the Freedom Charter states, we, the people of South Africa, declare for all our country and the world to know that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white, and that no government can justly claim authority unless it is based on the will of all the people. That our people have been robbed.
Order, honourable members.
That our people have been robbed of their birthright to land, liberty, and peace by government, founded on injustice and inequality. That our country will never be prosperous or free until all people live in brotherhood, enjoying equal rights and opportunities. That only a democratic state based on the will of all the people can secure to all their birthrights without distinction of color, race, sex, or belief. Close quote. Land, its ownership and uses has always played continues to play an important role in shaping the political economy of our country. The issue of land and agrarian transformation have and continue to be a central pillar, both the liberation struggle and the socio-economic transformation phase we are currently in. Agrarian transformation was one of the commitments undertaken by the African National Congress when it was voted into power in 1994. The ANC's work has been central in reversing the legacy of the 1913 Native Land Act. The preamble of the Freedom Charter says, I quote, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. Clause 4 of the Charter says that, I quote, the land shall be shared among those who work it. The ANC is faced with a massive task to translate this into a socio-economic reality. The 1992 ANC policy document, Ready to Govern, addresses the approach in a democratic dispensation in a swift, progressive, and principled way. It commits the ANC to develop a sustainable economy and a state infrastructure that will progressively improve the quality of life of all South Africans. The ANC has long acknowledged that the willing buyer, willing seller approach to land reform has not worked, and replaced it with a principle of just and equitable compensation in line with Section 25 of the Constitution. This underpins the Expropriation Bill in its future operating functioning. President Jacob Zuma, during his 2015 State of the Nation address, states that expropriation will be done in line with the Constitution. The Expropriation Bill is a fundamental part of the ANC's program for socio-economic transformation and in addressing the challenges of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. The Expropriation Bill seeks to ensure consistency with the Constitution and uniformity of procedure of all expropriation without interfering with the powers of expropriating authorities. Land reform is necessary to right the injustices of our shameful history of land dispossession and institutional restriction on black land ownership. It is against this backdrop that the African National Congress government introduced the Expropriation Bill in Parliament with the aim of advancing and expediting land reform in South Africa. The Chair has talked on that, Honorable Martins. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, 1996, recognizes expropriation as an essential mechanism for the state to acquire another properties for the public purpose or in the public interest, subject to just and equitable compensation being paid. The property clause, a key pillar of the Constitution of the Republic, is essence meant to address inequalities. That is important about this particular bill we are debating today. President J.G. Zuma, in his 2013 State of the Nation address, told Parliament that the land question in South Africa, that the willing buyer, willing seller principle previously applied, had forced the state to pay more for land. Whilst the land question is a highly emotive matter, we need to resolve it amicably within the framework of the Constitution and the law, clause code. He further assured the nation that the government will continue to pursue just and equitable principle for compensation as set out in the Constitution. Thus, the bill reflects all sections and subsections and is in line with the Constitution of the Republic. This bill, once enacted, will address many challenges that our country is facing in the form of service delivery protest. Many of these relate to shortages of land. Municipalities are struggling to find land for housing development, agricultural land to address the challenges of food security, the grazing land. We don't have grazing land in rural areas, and for installing services needed by the people on a daily basis. The Freedom Charter correctly states that there shall be houses, security, and comforts, and go further to state that unused housing space is to be made available for the people, not like what is happening in South Africa, where you find lying space that is not being occupied. The Freedom Charter is saying it must be given to the people for the development. To realize this provision of the Freedom Charter, the 1975 Expropriation Act is inadequate. We need the Expropriation Bill to bring us in line with the Constitution on the one hand, but critically to address the needs of our people. There are more people.
Honourable Member, will you just take your seat, please? Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
Chairperson, I just want to draw to your attention, there's some caucus and making a noise here. We really like to listen to the member there. So the DA are infringing on our right to listen.
No.
So can you please just deal with it?
Thank you, Honourable Members. I've made an appeal earlier that we keep the noise levels down in the House and allow the Speaker at the podium, order, Honourable Members, and allow the Speaker at the podium to be heard. Continue, Honourable Member.
There are more people and more businesses that need power. The infrastructure needs to be erected to make this power available. ESCOM came to our portfolio committee and stated that it struggled with delays in acquiring servitudes to erect the necessary infrastructure. The Deputy Chief Justice stated that government has been far too timid in using the property clause in the Bill of Rights to exercise its constitutionally empowered rights. The 1975 Act does not assist this process. It delays delivery. This bill strengthens expropriating authorities to fast-track the delivery of land for service delivery. The consequences of not doing this are starkly reflected in what is happening in Cape Town Metro. Here, because land is not being released, we found massive overcrowding leading to unhealthy living conditions and illness. Worse, the failure to release the land in the Cape Town Metro is stifling development. A critical function of a developmental state and its ability to lead a developmental agenda, shape and influence the character and content of the national agenda. Without land, this does not happen. Whereas the example of what is happening in the Cape Town metro has resulted in deaths in both formal and informal settlement, precisely because of the restriction of land used for developmental purposes. This has resulted in the case of Maspumelele, that the Honorable Whip was talking about, 4,000 people were left homeless in November 2015. 800 shacks destroyed with everything lost and 2 deaths. So it's a problem. The EFF and the UDM raised the concern that the bill would be unconstitutional because it excludes land dispossessed before 1913. This is an uninformed view of what government has been doing. When reading the clauses of this bill, it is standard practice that you need to read into it and in conjunction with other principles of legislation, regulation, and policies of the government.
Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
Honourable Minister must never distort.
No, Honourable Member, you can't rise to make a speech. Why are you rising?
No, she's misleading the House.
No, that's not the point of order. Take your seat, please. Continue, Honourable Matlopa.
In the State of the Nation address, the President, when addressing the reopening of the lodgement of the restitution claims by the people who missed the deadline on the 31st of December 1998, he stated that there will be an exceptions to the June 1913 cut-off date to accommodate claims by the descendants of the Khoi and San, as well as the heritage sites and historical landmarks. It must be noted that the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform have already recorded progress in dealing with this matter. The DA and UDM raised the concern of the definition of a property. The ANC believes that property is broad and need not to be reduced or confined. Property as defined in the Constitution is a law of general application. When you confine its definition, it may contradict a constitution. The Constitutional Court held that the purpose of Section 25 has been...
Honourable Matlopa, will you take your seat, please? Yes. Why are you rising, Honourable Member?
Under Rule 69, Chair.
Yes.
Can I read it for you?
What is your point on Rule 69?
My point of order is that the Honourable Member here, she must not come to the podium and distort what EFF has said on the debate. Is allowed on the Rule 69, Chair.
No, Honourable Member. Honourable Member, what we are dealing with here is a debate. There's different views. I don't deal with the facts. I am not part of the committee. I preside over the House. So that is a view that the member has, and your point of order is thus not sustained.
Chair, are we suspending the rules now?
No, the rules are not suspended. Can you just take your seat, please, so that we can continue?
Because Rule 69, Chair, is stipulated here.
Not a point of order. Continue, Honourable Matlopa.
But she must not distort
Take your seat, please.
If she wants to be a spokesperson of EFF, she must apply.
The Constitutional Court held that the purpose of Section 25 has to be both as protecting existing private property rights as well as serving the public interest, mainly in the sphere of land reform, but not limited thereto, and also as striking a proportionate balance between these two functions. So the DA, when they are looking at one side of the private owners, I think they need to balance the two. They must not only talk about the private owners, they must also talk about the people at large. In recognizing property as a social construct, the Constitutional Court has held that individual property rights are not absolute, but subject to societal consideration. We support the view of Professor Andrew van der Walt that when interpreting the property clause, one must move away from a static, typical private law conceptualist view of the Constitution as a guarantee of a status quo, but to a dynamic, typical public law view of a constitution as an instrument for social change and transformation under the auspices of entrenched constitutional values. The non-absolutist conception of individual constitutional property is the premise upon the constitutional vision of an orderly opening and restoration of secure property rights. At this stage, our constitutional jurisprudence, it is for the reason given above that it is practically impossible to furnish. The DA must listen. The High Judge, Judge el-Kulu, enkantolo enkulu in the land, lithi mangabe uthi we must define property, lithi practically impossible to furnish and judicially unwise to attempt a comprehensive definition of a property. That's what the judge is saying. And kuyamangalisa ukuthi i-DA namhlanje iphikisana ne-Constitutional Court ngoba mabehlulwa i-debate here in Parliament bayabaleka baye-Constitutional Court. But the judge namhlanje Constitutional Court, it will be judicially unwise. So asifuni ke thina njenge-African National Congress ukwenza izinto ezi-unwise and interfere with the Constitutional Court. We call upon all the political parties
Matlopa,
represented here
will
in
you just
Parliament.
take your seat? There's another member who is standing. I want to know. Take your seat, please. Why are you rising, honorable member?
Chairperson, when our...
What is your point of order, honorable member?
No.
Order, honorable members.
My point of order, Chair, is that we are happy as the FF that we are self-correcting the attitude of the Speaker on the presentation made by our CIC, because that was a debate as it is a debate by the member.
Honorable member, take your seat, please. Thank you.
We call upon all the political parties represented here in Parliament to remember the people who laid down their lives for this freedom and democracy to prevail in our country. As the President said, the issue of the land is an emotive matter that needs to be resolved amicably. Having said this, and as the Constitution states, the will of the majority must prevail. We are also very clear that land that has been acquired through illegal means and is being used for illegal purposes will be expropriated without compensation. We must be sensitive and responsible when we are dealing with these matters, and this is part of addressing the injustices of the past. I want to respond on what the EFF has said. You know, the EFF is bordering of being racist. Honorable Jeremy has credentials in the freedom and the liberation of this country. Honorable Jeremy was arrested, was in exile. Where was the EFF? Where were you? Where were you?
Order, Chair.
Where were you? We are just being racist. We are just
Honorable
being
Matlopa,
racist.
will you take your seat? Why are you rising, honorable
This
member?
member must not tell us about the yellow communist here.
Honorable
He
member,
sold out that Jeremy
that's
Cronin.
not a point of order. Take your seat. Continue, honorable member.
You know, the EFF is just posturing as peacetime heroes. You are nothing but warmongers who shout blood.
Chair, we can't sit here and then called by names here.
Honorable Matlopa.
Chair, we can't tolerate
Honorable
this person
member, I have
who's
not-
calling us nothing.
I
What
have not
she is-
recognized you. I have not recognized you. Take your seat, please.
Yeah, but she must not
Take
call
your
us
seat.
nothing, Chair. We can't tolerate this
Take
thing.
your seat, honorable member. Continue, honorable
We are
Matlopa.
honorable members of this House, Chair.
You can hear even now they shout.
Order, honorable members.
They shout.
Honorable members.
On a point of order, Chairperson. On a point of order.
What is your point of order, honorable member? Honorable Matlopa, will you take your seat, please? Yes. What is the point of order?
To call members of this House nothing and power mongers. Is it parliamentary?
No, honorable member.
No, I'm
There was
asking
reference.
you.
The
I'm
reference
asking
was to
you.
a party and not to an individual.
It was to us.
I will check the answer anyway, and if need be, I'll come back with a
Yeah,
ruling.
I want you to come back.
No,
If need be, I want you to come back.
I will deal with it, Honourable Member. You may take your seat now. Continue, Honourable Madlopa.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what happened to people without credentials. Honourable.
Order, Honourable Members. Honourable Madlopa, will you just take your seat, please? Take your seat, please. Yes, Honourable Member.
Ngiphatheka kabi mangabe umhlonishwa lapho ngaphambili ezothi asilutho la njengoba sila siwutho ngoba sivotelwe siyacela ukuthi ngempela asingadelelani lana angazi ke yena ukuthi ngempela oba ngiyamhlonipha ukuthi yini lento ayenzayo akaqonise lekho ukuthi nje asilutho aqonise
Honourable
manje.
Kaula, take your seat now. Thank you. Honourable Member, I said I will check the answer and then I will come back with a ruling. Can we now, Honourable Madlopa, can you wrap up your speech, please?
Yes, thanks, Honourable Chair. No, we want to lay the fears of those that are saying that there is a challenge around the issue of the criteria that is going to be followed in determining the compensation. It is clear in Chapter 5 of the bill, Section 12.1, the steps that is going to be considered before you reach the
Honourable
determination.
Madlopa, take your seat, please.
Uyabona lento
Why are you rising now, Honourable
Okay,
Member?
ngiyabonga. Sinenkinga kuyimanje ngalento yemhlaba. Abantu bangcotshwa emgodini bewu4.
Honourable
Yini
Member,
lokukhulunywa indaba yomhlaba
that is not the
ishandeza
point of
ungakhulunywa
order.
kahle.
That's not the point of
Asilwelanga
order.
thina lokhu ukuthi
Continue,
ngcotshwa
Honourable
emgodini
Madlopa.
siwu4.
Honourable Mabiga was having a challenge around the issue of being fair. There is Section 34 of this bill that allows the member that is not going to be happy to take the matter to court. But also there was a concern around the issue of the people that won't have the money to go to the court. This bill is accommodative because it is led by a caring organization, African National Congress. We are saying to this particular bill, the matter, you know, when there is a conflict between the expropriating authority and the expropriated owner, there will be a mediation. Also, the magistrate courts are going to be used. It's not that we are going to go to the High Court. This is a caring organization, so it's accommodated. It's part of it. And if you are not happy, Section 34 will cover you going to the courts. Also, there is a... You know, we become worried when the opposition parties are saying they support the Constitution. But they support it on the other hand, and on the other hand, they don't support it. Or they support it when it fits them. Because what they are saying here, they say they support the Constitution. But the 1913 is part of the Constitution that they are saying they are not supporting. But over and above that, there is a provision that our president has made to say that there will be exceptions that are going to take place. I think these are going to be covered by regulations. So I don't think there must be a fear because there will be a determination around that particular one. We are saying as African National Congress, we can no more delay the transformation and development. We are ready to go and defend this, even in the Constitutional Court.
Honourable Member, your time is now
Thank you
expired.
very much.
Thank you.
The ANC supports this bill.
I now recognize the Honourable the Deputy Minister of Public Works.
Chairperson, honourable members. Finally, nearly 20 years after the adoption of our universally admired Constitution, this expropriation bill has arrived to be passed here in the National Assembly. It is almost 20 years now since Clause 25, the property clause in the Bill of Rights, stated categorically, property may be expropriated for a public purpose or in the public interest only in terms of a general law of application. The bill before us here in this House is precisely that law of general application.
Honourable Deputy Minister, will you take your seat? Honourable Member, why are you rising?
Who is exactly the Deputy Minister between the Minister, the Deputy Minister,
Honourable Matiase,
and the member who appears on the Speaker's list? Who is exactly
Honourable
the Deputy
Matiase,
Minister of Public Works?
We've noted that on the screen, and another Deputy
Can you answer my
Minister's
question,
face.
Honourable Deputy?
The Honourable
House Chair.
Jeremy Cronin is the Deputy Minister of Public Works, and he will now continue in closing this debate.
Thank you, Chairperson. Although they accuse me of being a white man, I can sometimes also be a black woman. The bill before us is precisely that law of general application. It complies with the constitutional requirement that there should be no arbitrariness when the state exercises its expropriating powers. For nearly 20 years now, honourable members, despite the clear injunction from our Bill of Rights, we have failed as legislators to legislate a general law of application for cases of expropriation. Of course, government, like all democratic governments around the world, does have existing expropriating powers. Several national ministers, all 9 premiers, and all municipalities have existing...
Honourable Deputy Minister Cronin, will you take your seat? Why are you rising, Honourable Deputy Minister?
I wanted to ask whether the Deputy Minister is prepared to take a question.
Honourable Deputy Minister, are you prepared to take a question?
No, I won't take the question because I prefer to finish. If I have time afterwards, I will do so.
Okay. Order, honourable members. Order.
So, as I was saying...
Order, honourable members.
This government, including the Premier of the Western Cape, has existing expropriating powers.
Order, honourable members.
Which is why there was quite sharp differences between the Western Cape government and the DA in Parliament in regard to getting this piece of legislation through, because they've got expropriating powers, but they want to have the surety that we clearly describe in a general law of application how to proceed. There are a variety of different laws. All municipalities have expropriating powers as we speak. Several national ministers and all provinces have expropriating powers. What is lacking, and which is required by the Constitution, is a law of general application about how to proceed across the board when expropriating. The bill before this House has no ambitions to deprive any sphere of government, including the Western Cape government, of existing expropriating powers, but we seek to outline general procedures that must be followed in cases of expropriation to meet the test of constitutionality. The absence of such a general law of application has been unfair to the public, it's been unfair to investors, it's been unfair to the judiciary, which has often been called to pronounce on cases of expropriation without clear legislative guidance, and its absence has also been unfair to expropriating authorities. The property clause says the state must take reasonable legislative and other measures, I'm quoting, to foster conditions which enable citizens to gain access to land on an equitable basis. That's a must. It's not a maybe or should think about. It's an imperative must. Furthermore, the Bill of Rights asserts that for the purposes of expropriation, the public interest includes the nation's commitment to land reform and reforms to bring about equitable access to all South Africa's natural resources, not just land. No provision of the property clause, the Bill of Rights says, may impede the state from taking legislative and other measures to achieve land, water and related reform in order to redress the results of past racial discrimination. There you have it. The state is required to move decisively, not just because of the ANC's electoral mandate, but as a constitutional imperative. Now, I'm not suggesting that expropriation is only or even the primary means for achieving equitable access for all South Africans to land, to water, to electricity, to public transport, and so on. But it can be a very important means for ensuring transformative progress. Unfortunately, for over 2 decades, there has been uncertainty about expropriation. In the last Parliament, the former leader of the opposition even told us that the willing seller, willing buyer formula was entrenched within the Constitution. It's a case of colonial ideas occupying even a new generation of black people. You can scrutinize the Constitution with a microscope, but you won't find a single reference to willing seller, willing buyer. Lack of legislated clarity on how to proceed constitutionally with expropriations has been extremely costly to our country. There are notorious cases of extortionate amounts of public money being paid in land restitution in some cases. In the Portfolio Committee, Eskom told us of cases in which finishing near-completed transmissions lines was delayed by one or two landowners holding out for a willing seller bonanza. We cannot allow uncertainty about expropriation for a public purpose to persist, and that is why passing this bill today is so important. In the committee's public hearings, two issues in particular kept cropping up: the definition of property and the question of compensation. The DA, although they've abandoned it somewhat today, in particular has consistently tried to restrict the definition of property that might be expropriated. Two things need to be said in response. First of all, this is a law of general application. In many other acts dealing with specific sectors and ministers, property that might be expropriated is defined in various ways. You can have a look at the National Forest Act of 1998, for instance, or the Water Services Act of 1997, which describe the specific kinds of property that a Minister for Water and Sanitation might expropriate, to take that example. But this bill, here we are dealing with a law, again, of general application. But secondly, as the Honourable Madlopo has said, we were guided in our approach in approaching what we meant by property for expropriation by the judgment of the Constitutional Court in the FNB versus SARS case. In its judgment, the Constitutional Court said, and I quote, "It is practically impossible to furnish and judicially unwise to attempt a comprehensive definition of property for purposes of Section 25 of the Property Clause." What about compensation? The DA tried to make market value the overriding criteria in determining compensation. This is against both the spirit and the letter of the Bill of Rights. It is wrong, secondly, to imagine that it's only wealthy property owners who might be expropriated. A just and equitable compensation for an evicted poor community might require compensation well above market value, in the case of building a dam, for instance. And three, when the Bill of Rights speaks of just and equitable compensation, it is not just thinking about individuals affected by expropriation. Money paid in compensation is not government money, it's public money. And expropriating authorities have a responsibility to ensure that in the public interest, extortionate compensation is not extracted by individuals. In short, honourable members and chairperson, the constitutional pretenders who claim to have fundamental problems with this bill, in fact don't have problems with the bill as such. They have problems with the actual 1996 constitution of this democratic South Africa.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. Honourable members, during the course of this debate, I undertook to look at Hansard in reference to a specific statement that was made by the Honourable Madlopa when she was debating on this issue. I have since established that the Honourable Member has said, "You sitting here are nothing but warmongers." This statement is unparliamentary, and I now request the Honourable Madlopa to withdraw that statement.
I withdraw.
Thank you, Honourable Member. That concludes the debate, Honourable Members. Order. Amendments to the bill have been proposed in terms of Assembly Rule 254 and published on the order paper in the name of the Honourable Mrs. A.M. Dreyer. In terms of Rule 254, Section 5, Paragraph B, I have decided to put the amendments for decision by the House. The amendments that have been proposed are to 5 clauses which are part of the bill. The amendments will be put together for decision. Once the House has taken a decision on them, the second reading of the bill will be put for decision. I now put the amendments as they appear on the order paper. Are there any objections to the amendments as moved by the Honourable Dreyer?
Honourable House Chair, we object to all of them.
There's an objection. I will now put the question. Those in favour will say aye. Those against will say no. I think the noes have it.
House Chairperson, it seemed a bit close to call. We call for a division.
A division having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes. Honourable members, will you take up your allocated seats, please? Order, honourable members. Order. I would like to remind members that they may only vote from the allocated seats. When requested to do so, members must simply indicate their vote by pressing the appropriate button below the yes, no, or abstain signs. If a member inadvertently presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. Honourable members, there's still too much noise. We're going into a voting session. The last button pressed will be recorded as the members vote when the voting session is closed. The question before the House is that the amendments to the Expropriation Bill, as they appear on the order paper and proposed by the Honourable Dreyer, be agreed to. Are all members in their allocated seats? Voting will now commence. Those in favour of the amendments should press the yes button. Those against should press the no button. And those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have all members voted? Thank you. The voting session is now closed. Honourable members, the outcome of the division is as follows. Those in favour of the amendments is 72. Those against is 201. And there are 19 abstentions. Accordingly, the amendments are negativied. It's rejected. As the amendments have been rejected, I now put the question. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? Yes. I now put the question. Those in favour will say aye. Aye. And those against will say no. No. I think the ayes have it.
House Chair, the Democratic Alliance calls for a division on this job-killing bill.
Division having been called, the bells will be rung for 1 minute. Order, honourable members, will you take up your allocated seats, please? I would like to remind members that they may only vote from their allocated seats, and when requested to do so, members must simply indicate their vote by pressing the appropriate button below the yes, no, or abstain signs. If a member inadvertently presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed will be recorded as the members vote when the voting session is closed. The question before the House is that the Expropriation Bill be read a second time. Are all members in their seats? Yes. Voting will now commence. Those in favour of the bill being read a second time should press the yes button. Yes. And those against should press the no button. No. And those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have all members voted? The voting session is now closed. Honourable members, the outcome of the division is as follows. Those in favour 202, those against 88, and there are 2 abstentions. The bill is accordingly agreed to. The Secretary will read the bill a second time.
Expropriation Bill.
The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. The Secretary will read the third order.
Consideration of request for approval by Parliament of Cape Town Agreement of 2012 on the implementation of the provisions of the Torremolinos Protocol of 1993 relating to the International Convention for the Safety of Fishing Vessels 1977 in terms of Section 231 sub 2 of the Constitution.
Are there any objections to the approval by Parliament of the Cape Town Agreement of 2012 on the implementation of the provisions of the Torremolinos Protocol of 1993 as it appears on the order paper? No objections. It is agreed to. The Secretary will read the last order.
Consideration of request for approval by Parliament of African Maritime Transport Charter in terms of Section 231 sub 2 of the Constitution.
Are there any objections to the approval by Parliament of the African Maritime Transport Charter as it appears on the order paper? No objections, and it's agreed to. Honourable members, that concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned.